Hi, everyone. It's S.J. Thomason here, and today we're going to have a free-for-all. And so I'm about to post a link in the chat, and so people can come in and join me. But what I thought I'd do is I spent a little time today listening to Braxton Hunter's replies to a number of different atheists. And so he'd featured people like Godless Engineer and Shannon Q and Jeff Williams and Nathan Ormond, who's actually in the chat right now. He responded to them, and he responded to some other people like Joe Schmidt and Rusty, somebody named Rusty, and a couple of others that I'm not as familiar with. So I was going to focus on the ones that I am more familiar with and listen into this and do a little commentary. But I thought I'd also open it up to, especially to those people who have been commented on. So I see Nathan in the chat, so it seems only normal to bring Nathan in so he can offer a rebuttal to Braxton's rebuttal to his comments. And so I thought that would be a fair and fun thing to do. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share the link here before we start Braxton's video. And so I'm going to open this up. This is to everyone. Can we just copy this? Okay. So I'm opening it up. I'm putting this in the chat. So if you guys want to come in here and give your comments, do it. Be bold. Be courageous. I see Smokey Saint too. We'd like to bring him in as well. Vera, of course. I don't know that if you go on channels, but I know you're Nathan's girlfriend. So if you want to come join us too, and that would be a lot of fun. I see Mr. Parker is already in here, so I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. Hello, Mr. Parker.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Doing good.
Good. Okay. So I'll just wait and see who else is coming on here. I see Susan also in the chat. And so what we're going to do is we'll listen to a little bit of Braxton. Yeah, Vera, feel free to come on in. Susan, if you want to come in, you're more than welcome. Maybe what I'll do is I'll wait a second before I go to look at Braxton's video just to see if anyone else comes in here to join. But so Mr. Parker, you want to share a little bit of information about yourself so people know who you are and how they can find you? I know you're on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and I'm on YouTube too. And, I'm an atheist and I'm quite involved with the online community. And that's about it. I love joining open hangouts and talking to people.
Good. Okay. So yeah, that's great. So thank you so much for coming on. So what we're going to do today, Susan asked what we're going to cover. A few of the things that we're going to cover are issues such as free will. That was spoken about a lot. Some of the atheist arguments against the Christian worldview. Some of them have said that atheism just as well explains life as Christianity does. And sometimes what they do is they'll erect a straw man against the Christian position by claiming that the Bible is literal in every verse. And of course, we know that even the Lamb of God is not literal in the Bible. We've got some metaphors in there. But anyway, okay, so we've got Smokey's working on a couple of things. Susan might join. I'm going to go ahead, Mr. Parker, I'm going to go ahead and look at this video here. We've got the screen shared. So let's go ahead and take a look see what Braxton has to say. This part is his response to Jeff Williams, who is another atheist. And so here we go. And let me know if anyone can't hear this.
And here, actually, I'm going to let Jeff Williams respond. Jeff Williams, this is an interesting one. This guy has been absolutely persistent. Bless your heart, Jeff. Every time I tweet anything, he posts a link to this. Every time, it's all over the place. He wants people to see this video. And so I made actually a response to his video back when he first released it, just for my patrons, not because I didn't want atheists to see it, but because at the time I wasn't sure whether I even wanted to make response videos to this. And I wanted to see whether my patrons, most of whom are Christians, thought that it would be helpful. But I actually have a recording of that, and I want to go ahead and release my answer to him here. So you're going to see the older background here from me, but here's the answer. I still stand by it.
This is a fuzzy question resting on possible equivocation of the word explain. One can contrive a story that takes into account all relevant facts, but is that what we generally mean by explanation? Or does explanation require objective evidence to actually explain how something comes about? Certainly, various ancient myths explain creation and cosmic evolution in the former sense, but do we give them the same seriousness as cosmology based on the laws of nature following the Big Bang.
Okay, now see, he's starting to get it here. Here, what he's saying is, he's like, look, yes, even some ancient myths, like aside, let's put Christianity aside for a minute. Some of these ancient myths, yeah, they do account for some of these things, but they don't account for it as well as some of these other things. That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to say. We're saying, let's take a fact that we agree about. I still haven't heard one yet, and let's figure out which worldview explains it better. If you think that because of science and some of these things, Christianity doesn't account for origins or whatever better, then make that case. But we're looking for facts you and I agree are real facts about the way the world is, that your worldview makes better sense of than mine. And we're going to see if we hear any of those.
Before he goes to that, I just wanted to comment, and I want to see if we've got, look at this. Who's this in the group? We got Nathan in here. So let me go ahead and bring Nathan in. Hi, Nathan.
Hi, SJ.
So you want to introduce yourself before we move on here?
I'm Nathan. I mean, I've been on here before, so if you're watching, you're probably kind of familiar with me and stuff.
Great. Yeah, Nathan Ormond, he is another agnostic. He's famously been converted by Pine Creek Doug. And so there was a mention of that, actually. I don't know. Had you had a chance to watch this video response to you?
I saw a bit of that. I saw that Braxton has me in there at the end, but I've not listened to it in any detail. Okay, excellent. So I should probably turn down my volume if you can figure out how to even do that, because Susan's saying I'm very loud compared to the video, so that's not good. So anyway, Jeff, one of the things that Jeff is going to point out here is he's going to use a number of different arguments to argue against Christianity and kind of try to create a dichotomy between Christianity and science. But as I believe, and also as Braxton believes, Christianity and science are like peanut butter and jelly. They go hand in hand as far as I'm concerned. So I actually think that the Big Bang supports a lot of what we see in the Bible. So that there was a beginning. That's quite clear. So anyway, okay, so let's go ahead. You want to go ahead and listen to this response? And we're going to get to your part too, Nathan, especially because you're here. So I might I'm going to skip over a couple of the other atheists who are in this video, and then we'll get right to yours after Jeff's. How about that? Yeah, sure.
All right.
Can do whatever. Obviously, I have to put the books in the background to give myself
credibility. Yeah, sure. I should probably do a screen share in the background of mine. So I'm in this room that has no bookshelf, and my bookshelves are downstairs in different rooms, but I can't set it up that way. So I have to just go with this. Okay, so here we go. Here's Jeff's thing.
Drew says, what program am I using to do this? It's Ecamm Live that is only for Mac, I think.
Do we think a claim that a metaphysical creator created light, the earth, and water before he created the stars to be the equal of an explanation that says gravity pulled together hydrogen atoms, which coalesced into stars that through nuclear fusion formed heavier elements, which dying stars spewed into space, and which themselves coalesced through gravity into planets?
Okay, now see what he's done here. The other day, when I was talking about Jordan Peterson, I pointed out that much of atheism today sounds like a 13-year-old atheist boy angrily railing against fundamentalist Christianity. Well, I'm actually sympathetic to a young earth creationist reading of Genesis 1, but it's not my understanding. And I actually think he's created a false dichotomy here. The idea that Christians can't believe that what he just described is how matter coalesced into stars and then planets formed. It's exactly what I believe, and I'm a Christian. So that's not a count for you. It's not a count for me. I'm sorry. That's not a point for you. That's not a point for me. That's just a point, right? You don't get to hug everything that science discovers to atheism as though atheism is the only answer for those things, or as if science is the purview of atheism.
Hunter asks us to answer according to our own personal worldview. Okay. I would characterize mine as non-reductionalist physicalist, whose approach primarily takes on a Heideggerian inquiry into being.
By the way, he answers the rest of the questions much more quickly than he does this one.
So what does that really mean? First of all, it means I reject anything beyond physical reality on the grounds of lack of evidence and the limits of human epistemology.
I think one of you guys has background noise going on. I just wanted to see if you could if you can mute that a little bit. Just want to point that out. I also want to say thank you so much to John. He sent a pretty generous super chat. That was super generous, John, and thank you so much. I appreciate your patronage, and so thank you. So, okay, so now it sounds pretty good, and I'm still yeah, it's actually good with you guys. Muted that just for a second, so let's go back here.
Ever know such a thing? Second, it means that I respect science within its proper limits, but believe aesthetic knowledge can lead to deeper truth. The last scene of Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov can teach us far more about morality than all the systematic philosophies ever devised.
I want to talk about that. I wanted to see, have either of you guys, because I haven't read that, so have either of you guys read the Brothers? Have you read that book by Dostoevsky?
Only the first chapter.
Okay. So I don't know exactly what he's saying as far as morality, but I did want to say that I believe that morality is pretty well explained by having an objective moral standard and objective morality. And I think that the Christian worldview can explain that well, but I don't think atheism offers an explanation for why we know consciously that there are certain things that are morally right, completely acceptable in all situations, and morally wrong. So that's just something. And whether Braxton's going to he's going to distinguish moral ontology, which is saying that morality exists, from moral epistemology, saying how we come to know that morality, because there seems to be a need for that distinction quite a bit in these videos. So, okay, so so you want to say something?
Well, just, I mean, I think there are non-theistic moral realist positions, and I think those positions explain the phenomena better than atheism, and don't have the same issues that the theistic explanations do of objective morality. So just that they do exist.
Oh yeah, there are people who are moral realists who are atheists or agnostics. You have Steve McRae is an example. There's definitely a few like that. I've actually debated a few of them. Negation of P is a person I debated. I've debated on that. Prophet of Zod, I debated on that. And there's another guy, but I can't remember his name. But right now, so okay, so let's go back and see what he has to say here.
Most importantly,
I love Dostoevsky, but that's just false.
Means that I'm
the last part of Brothers Karamazov teaches us more about philosophy. He said systematic philosophy, okay, than any other philosophy book ever could. Are you kidding me?
Comfortable with mystery and uncertainty.
That seems kind of like a worldview that Jeff has.
In fact, I'm skeptical of any worldview that claims to answer everything. The world is endlessly.
Okay, so you're saying, look, I reject all supernatural stuff, and I'm not saying I can answer stuff. Okay, that's fine. But if we're doing worldview analysis, we're saying we got a fact here that you and I both agree is real, like the universal claims of religious experience and things like that. Then that's a fact. Like, he may not agree that supernatural stuff is happening, but the fact that that is a universal claim from every culture. Now, again, remember, if you're new to this, cumulative case apologetics, this is not me. I wouldn't use this as an argument in itself, like in a syllogism. I'm just throwing out a fact that we both agree is true and say, does that sit better on my worldview or yours? Well, every culture in the world claims that they've had supernatural experiences. Okay, that makes much more sense on Christianity than it does on yours. And if it makes better sense on yours, if you can explain that anthropologically, naturalistically somehow, then give that to us. But if you're not going to give that to us, I'm sorry, that's a point in favor of Christianity.
I want to point out what he's saying here, what he's actually, because a lot of people might hear that and think, what is he talking about? One of the things that we need to talk about is Psalm 82. And this is a psalm where God speaks of his council of gods, and he basically calls them to order. And he is the Most High. It's made evident in the Bible that God, the Father, is the Most High, alongside with Jesus and the Holy Spirit. However, the idea that other people and other faiths can have spiritual experiences is speaking to the fact that we're in a spiritual battle here in the world. And that's spoken of in Christianity, and it's spoken of in Psalm 82 and related verses such as Deuteronomy 6 and in Genesis and other places. And so that's the deal. Yeah, this is the video, and I'm going to go ahead and post the link again in case any of you guys who are joining in the crowd here want to join. But Nathan or Mr. Parker, did you guys want to comment on any of this?
I think I wanted to say, so obviously you gave there like how the Christian accounts for those. I'd want to say that the way that the non-Christian would account for these different cultures having these experiences would just be because we share the same biology, and having these experiences is just a feature of human psychology. It's pretty clear that we can induce these types of experiences with like psychedelic drugs or under certain conditions, and so the kind of universal nature of people across all cultures having them is pretty well accounted for by on a naturalist worldview as well. And I think that that's a simpler explanation than the spiritual battle, but
Okay, that's fair, and thank you. I do appreciate your explanation of that, because that's something that we can speak of actually in Christianity. I want to say hi actually into the crowd, because actually Braxton also mentioned Pine Creek, and Pine Creek now is in the chat. And Braxton said that he's unfortunately converted Nathan, who had once been an agnostic, then he became a Christian, but I think he got aligned with some kind of fundamentalist sort of Christians. And then
I think they're probably, I don't know that they were and like much more fundamentalist than most kind of like Calvinists really. Yes, especially like in America. Like I think America's much more fundamentalist in general than in the UK. But
that seems fair. I was able to turn my volume a little bit differently. I adjusted it to make it better, because Susan said I was just so loud compared to the video, and I don't want that.
I think it's balanced out a bit now.
I changed it. So Rob, Sentinel Apologetics is in the house. So Rob, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, SJ. Thanks for the invite. I haven't been online in a while, but nice to be around Christians. It's good.
Yeah, I want to recommend your Bedrock of Christianity videos. You've made a nice series of videos on the bedrock foundations of Christianity, and I think it was really well researched and very well thought out. And so please go over to Sentinel Apologetics if you haven't yet. I've actually got links to all of your channels, I think automatically pasted in all of my videos. So I should have you in the description really already. So excellent. So
how have you been,
thank you.
SJ?
I've been pretty good. I've been trying to.
That's good.
One of my sons is, unfortunately, because he had COVID earlier in September, he's gotten really behind in school. So a lot of my waking moments after school when he's home are spent helping him on his homework and things like that. So it's been a little busier.
If you need any math help, I'm here to help.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I might take you up on that. Well, right now he's got a really easy subject, but maybe later on, I don't know. Right. He's got geometry, and it's like, that just to me is so easy. So that part's fortunate. Okay, so we're listening to this video that was made yesterday. It's a response from Braxton Hunter to a bunch of atheists, godless engineer, Shannon Q. And I was going to focus on Jeff Williams. Then since Nathan's here and part of the response went to Nathan, the next one I will focus on is Nathan, the portion where he's reviewing Nathan's video.
Okay.
And so let's just listen to this, and I'll stop it and we can all chat.
Until you explain how yours accounts for that better.
Mysterious, and very little is knowable to us. And when being does disclose an aspect of itself, it simultaneously conceals so much more. This is inherent from first perception, when our observation collapses superposition to perceived eigenstate, which forever conceals all other possibilities.
He's saying that in quantum superposition, once the particle collapses, like a waveform collapses into a particle, it conceals all the other possibilities. Well, in one sense, no, it doesn't, because it could have landed anywhere. Everywhere in the frame is another possibility, but still, okay, that things went one way. We don't know how they might have gone another way. Okay, I agree with you. I'm asking a very simple question. Point to a fact that you and I think is a real, true fact about that we agree about, and say which worldview makes better sense of that. That's it. You can't point to one thing that atheists believe that you think makes better sense on your atheistic worldview than.
Okay, so I want to see if any of you guys want to offer comments on that thought. Is there a fact that we all can agree with that atheism provides a better explanation than Christianity? Or
the resurrection accounts of Jesus of Nazareth, right? Like, how do you even explain for that outside of naturalism?
So I would say, well, that's one of the things is atheists can explain that. When we take the best explanation for the information that we have surrounding the resurrection, I think you can make a pretty powerful case that we have a miracle occurred. God raised Jesus from the dead. So it's just what I would say. Rob, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, two things. First, his statement about the quantum mechanics is actually quite wrong. I don't know if he's saying that as a, I don't know if he's being facetious. I don't know if facetious is the right word, but we can, with a high degree of precision, it is ultimately probabilistic. I mean, this is nothing but, if you go into statistical mechanics and then you apply that, the maths with respect to quantum mechanics, but it's not like we don't know where things are. I mean, I'm using very colloquial terms here, but yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. Well, I don't know if he was just sort of regurgitating, who's this guy, Jeff Williams?
Yes.
I don't know if he was just regurgitating them at that and sort of like trying to shoehorn God in that. But in other words, let me conclude on the quantum thing with this. It's famously known that, like Einstein said, God doesn't play dice with the universe. But that's sort of like a knee-jerk reaction with respect to what was obviously a very deterministic. So like when you look into Brownian motion, for example, which, by the way, Einstein wrote a paper on that. But the math at that level shows a very deterministic cause-effect sort of phenomena. The moment you shoehorn in true randomness, that seems to make the system, which is the universe, a very self-serving. I'm using very layman type sort of to try and communicate to people who don't know the physics terminology, but it makes the universe sort of self-sufficient. In other words, all these attributes we apply to God, all the so-called omni attributes, it's like you could sort of like put that onto the universe, because quantum mechanics gives that impression of how spooky and weird and grand this universe is. So that's why Einstein was sort of like knee-jerk reacting, but he wasn't defending God in that sense. He's just saying it. It's just like, because God is above the universe, so why would he need to play dice with the universe? It's like the universe has one up, as if the universe has a one-up property over God, because the universe is random. In other words, the universe is unorthodox, and God can't be unorthodox. But then Hugh Ross, who we interviewed, so SJ and I, we interviewed him on climate change stuff. He, in his book Beyond the Cosmos, brilliantly, and he's not alone in this, he brings in a lot of mathematicians and Christian physicists, where they rightfully say that actually a more careful thought process on that whole God and dice. So Hugh Ross says God does play with dice, but it's the way he plays with the dice that further argues for the fine-tuning argument in regards to reality. So in other words, even the whole dice thing can point indirectly to God. Now, with respect to Nathan, I think what Nathan's saying is, okay, that's all well and good, but it's still implicit. What would be explicit would be something like the resurrection, because that is in space-time. That's happening in space-time. It's not.
From my point, I just said that like flippantly because I know that Christians always go for it, and so I think like it's like a pretty good chess move to just like go for the core issue. But I think like the meta issue is that like I think Braxton's like missed this, that in his question itself, right? He's asking like to compare basically like metaphysical hypotheses, and the irony almost is that he's almost completely ignored that. Like he's not seeing how naturalism offers simpler and more elegant explanations, which is like the criterion for a good metaphysical explanation is. And so like you kind of get bogged down in like bad interpretations of quantum mechanics rather than like what do the so these what's the term? There's like explanans and explanandum. I forget which one's which. The explanans is like the data point, and then the explanandum's meant to give us some insight. But the thing is that like you could come up with an explanation that involves all sorts of things that you don't need. You want what only what's sufficient to bring about the data point that you have. and so you don't want to like, if you just put all sorts of random things in there, you just open the door to like me making up random things and putting them in there as well that aren't Christianity.
So let me just ask really quickly a question.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with the double slit experiment?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Because I think there's something to that with the idea of just the presence of an observer or a conscious mind was able to manipulate the movements of the waves and particles. And I think that's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. It's okay. So, for example, Michael Heiser actually interviewed an actual physicist who's turned, even now his hobby is he's a pastor, but he's a legit physicist, specifically in quantum mechanics. It's a 3-part interview on Paranormal that podcast Heiser runs. I'd advise everyone to check that out, because these are the sort of, SJ, I'm not saying you're wrong on saying that. What I'm saying is that is the type of phenomena that it's sort of like a yes no. It's not. It leads it. That type of information, that perspective, it opens the door for the so-called quantum woo type of pseudoscience that we usually see, and in this case, it goes into a type of idealism and all that. I want to remove myself from that. I find it much more fascinating that when you see quantum mechanics just the way it is from a naturalist point of view, and this is what Hugh Ross does, in my opinion, all the more it gives glory to God because of the way it works, its sophistication and so on, rather than going into these like sort of like we're spiritualizing quantum mechanics or something, like there's something behind it, or like there's some magic or something.
Yeah.
So someone like Heiser as well has tackled that myth. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't want to. I know you were sort of bringing out that perspective, but I just wanted to say that there are Christian scientists that are like opposing that perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that those are very good recommendations. I haven't watched any of those videos that you're referring to, so I'll definitely go take a look at those and see if I can't put them into the description.
I'll private
here.
message to you in the private chat. Yeah, the relevant stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to say though, Nathan, when you mentioned about simplicity, have you seen the movie Contact with that?
I have. Sagan? Yeah.
Great. So remember that end court scene where pretty much everyone was unanimous in saying that she hallucinated the whole event? Because think about it, they were going by that criterion of simplicity. Because if you put yourself in their shoes, everything screams against her testimony, right? The one thing that...
Well, I mean, we have a privileged... as the viewer, we have different data than the people in the thing as well. That's the people in the film. That's an important thing to mention.
Well, the one thing that they do, so I wrote a blog post on this. My blog post is titled "Contact, Science, and Religion," and I weigh how Palmer is in the same boat as Ellie. And so, in other words, in that blog post, I point out that both there's no difference between Ellie and Palmer, because at the end of the day, both are lumped into the category of having this very subjective experience. The one thing, at least in Ellie's case, so we can't really presume this is not the case for Palmer, this is my point, but the one thing going for Ellie is the 12-hour, the 18-hour recording, the static, yeah. Which the prosecutor did not bring out, because that tiny piece of evidence was enough to just prove her right.
Well, I don't know if it completely would have, but it certainly would have counted in her favor. I think this is the thing.
It would have. It would have in a big way.
But this is the crazy. I don't get genuinely how you guys don't see it. That like, so say from my point of view, especially if we make it about Jesus and the resurrection accounts and stuff like that, that I'm saying it is entirely possible, right, that those accounts are the results of eyewitnesses who were there, who genuinely witnessed a resurrection. But that evidence isn't good enough for me to, even if that evidence was caused by that genuinely happening, it isn't good enough for me with what I have today to then believe based on those accounts.
I'm saying Ellie's 18 hours static is what I show in the Bedrock series.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, I'll have a look at the Bedrock series and see if that's the case.
I'll have to look at that. I'll have to look at Ellie's movie.
Why? So Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey are the actor. But why that's significant is not so much... I mean, anyone could have manipulated, I guess, the static, right? Or maybe she has the lucky guess it was 18 hours or something. The point is, everyone was witness to that device going through in a split second.
Right.
And so they get the physics wrong, but to follow along with the story, the fact that she has a type of time dilation just is enough, in my opinion, smoking gun.
So is this based on a real story, Rob?
No, it's not.
Carl Sagan wrote the story.
Well, it was written specifically in the context, though, of like justifying religious experience from that point of view, I think. But the other thing is that, you know, like even if the 12-hour static's real or whatever, like it's still the content of that experience or what it is. Like I still don't think we're justified in concluding precisely that we know what happened. Like for example, you know, did the machine legitimately transport her across the universe to have that experience, or was there something else going on? Or, you know, I think we can't make any, like, we can't make conclusions beyond the kind of data that we have, really. But then from the point of view of watching the film, I guess you're gonna like have a bias because you kind of share her experience, right, where you want to. And that's what I say about religious experience, is that they do convince people, and that's fine, but it's just not convincing for me.
The only one who has an optimistic bias is Palmer. That's really, and I'll just say that. But.
I definitely have to go see that movie because I haven't seen it. It sounds super interesting. I have to say that. I'm jumping ahead to where Nathan is, just so we make sure we get to Nathan since he's on here. So here's Braxton's take on Nathan. So let's hear this.
Real quickly, let's move on to Nathan Ormond.
So there's so many, and a lot of these issues.
Okay, now what he's saying is I'm like, what does my worldview? This is where at the end of the question I ask, okay, look, what does your worldview account for that mine doesn't account for, as well as your worldview that includes atheism? And he says, oh, there's just so many. Let's see what else he says.
Most important ones. I was literally just in a Discord server where we were talking.
What I want to say is, again, this is the Star Check test going on again. He's kind of the type of responder who's saying it's 1 star, and if I could give you less than 1 star, I'd do that.
Does anyone know what that is? Because I didn't watch the whole video.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you what it is. Yeah. He said that sometimes he started off with saying with Godless Engineer, because Godless Engineer said everything, Christianity claims to understand everything and make a claim like that, and his position is that you should go with, when you're looking at rankings on Amazon, for example, he says you should look at the rankings that are between 2 and 4 because they're going to be less biased. He says if it's a 5-star ranking, it means you love everything about the author, and it's actually really unlikely that the author's that good. And then he said if it's a 1-star ranking, you hate everything about the author. And he says that the 1-star ranking is somebody who basically says you wouldn't give any credence to any sort of Christianity belief.
Well, that shows how much he knows about what I think.
So you do give some credence to it.
There's different things that people mean by Christianity. There's different beliefs within that. I like just me saying that I think naturalism is a better explanation of all the things I know doesn't mean that I don't think that there's like any interesting aspects of Christianity, which or that it's got like an intellectually rich historical tradition, for example, or that it has like some cool explanations of things. That's not So I do think that just doesn't take into, like, why the hell would I be reading like books on Augustine in my free time if that's what I thought? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Oh, I didn't know you were reading books on Augustine in your free time. That's good. Have you read Tom Holland's book by chance? The Dominion?
I've not, no.
Highly recommend that. So just getting it out there. Okay, so let's listen to what you had to say here.
Before I say what I'm thinking, Majesty of Reason, who's got a really cool YouTube channel. He's studying philosophy.
Majesty of Reason is Joe Schmid, I think, the guy that was on the bottom in the last video that we just looked at.
And his answers will actually be philosophically good. So be sure to...
Oh, hey, there we go. Micah Edvinson was the guy in the top right in the last video. Sorry, Micah, but we got there.
Grab him and check that out. But yeah, my answers are not going to be philosophically good. I'm just going to be talking out of my ass.
I like the humility there.
Nathan, did you want to say anything?
Well, I mean, it's not like I sat down and really like thought about my response. So I just like was sort of bored after work, and I thought, well, if I'm going to watch this video, I might as well stream and review it at the same time. So it is literally just like a stream of consciousness. It's not like it's not like I thought, how can I like formulate the strongest possible objection or something like that. It was. I don't even think it's I don't even think I make a good point at all. But
well, so you can clarify it. Whatever you said in this video, you can totally clarify right now if you want to.
Well, it's not. It's that I don't even think it's like a particularly relevant objection, because I don't want to ruin it. Maybe it's best to comment at that point. But I think what I raise is why pragmatically why Christianity isn't the best option. But I don't think that answers, like, in terms of metaphysical explanations, what's better or worse. So I don't even think like my answers. I think it misses the point completely. But
okay. So we'll go back and listen some more. All right.
So almost all of what I see as the most important issues that humanity seems to face, issues to do with like climate change, responsible use of the technological power that we have.
I wanted to see if Rob wants to make a comment on climate change, because we just interviewed Hugh Ross about his climate change book. And there was something that you pointed out to me a while ago, Rob, that I decided I had to get the book purely because of that one page with that one piece of data. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's something, again, that all the atheists need to wrestle with, I reckon. Just the so-called coincidences of the way things happen in nature, right? So in other words, you have the Younger Dryas event around 15,000 years ago in Greenland, a meteorite hitting. That stops the ice age from taking place, so it's just the right event to maintain climate stability at a very stable rate for the last 9,000 years. And ironically, because humans arise on the scene about 150,000 years ago, humans start to migrate. So I believe Noah's floods the Persian Gulf, so that's about 20,000 years ago. And then as the Genesis story says, nations are divided, people go around. So this is where humans are pretty much now ready for high technology society. But you need a stable climate for that, especially when agriculture is on the scene and on the horizon. So, finding like the next sort of chapter, or the next season, as Ecclesiastes would say, right? Like the next sort of like, okay, you humans are ready to do this. I'm going to make that possible for you. It feels too much like a Truman Show. In other words, it's like you have
feels.
Yeah, it does. When you actually see nature play out the way it does, it sort of gives that impression.
I think in your reasons there, you're making a sort of like after the fact, therefore caused by kind of fallacy. Like, I mean, in a sense, like, yeah, of course, our current conditions were like brought about by whatever antecedent conditions. But say let's just assume naturalism's like true for a moment. Then whatever conditions bring about like organisms who have enough like leisure time to kind of like kick back and study themselves and have enough intelligence to figure it out or whatever, then they're going to like study those conditions and go, oh, this is really convenient for us, because those just are the conditions that brought them about. Like it's not. I don't get how that really.
To be honest, I'm not. I don't disagree with that. That's, to me, that's just no different to a Plato's cave sort of matrix analogy, where Neo can just go along his everyday life in the matrix. But the architect is still governing the matrix, whether Neo likes it or not.
But the problem is that you have to show you have to show that there even is an architect. Like how, like you can't just assume it. Like, so for someone who isn't just assuming it, how do they get to that?
So it comes back to Morpheus having to enter the matrix, just like Jesus enters the matrix in order to show us, that the architect's there.
Oh, so are you referring to Krishna there, when Krishna incarnated?
No, that has nothing to do with the hypostasis.
This is the point. How do I know which one you're referring to? There's been a lot of God incarnations, right, throughout history.
You're talking about is the so-called incarnation of the avatar in Hinduism, is that equivalent to the hypostasis that the early Jews were thinking, which is pre-Hinduism, by the way? Not. I mean, Hinduism is actually
a meaningless word to me. Like, it's not a word that has any meaning. I have no idea what hypostasis means. It kind of sounds made up. If you could point to a hypostasis for me, and I could say, oh, there's a hypostasis, and identify it, but I don't have any concept, like in my mind, of what that word refers to or means. Like,
the probably the loosest analogy in nature would be just say how light behaves, particle or wave, or the Banach-Tarski paradox in math. One of the two.
I don't really understand what's like. What about light is a hypostasis? Like what?
So Nathan, this is rich philosophical lingo that early philosophers were thinking of in regards to just the way how the world runs. For example, in regards to the soul, right? Let's bring it more down to home. So the soul in a human body, the soul is in hypostasis with the terrestrial.
I don't think there are souls, so that example won't really work.
Well, I'm going along with the way they would define hypostasis or hypostasis. So
it's but giving me an example of something that I think doesn't exist, to then show that word refers to something else that I don't think exists yet, isn't going to be very good for me. Have
you looked into John Eccles' work in regards to what he dubbed as Psychon?
No, I don't know who John Eccles is.
So Sir John Eccles, the neuroscientist that was knighted and won the Nobel Prize. He's a neuroscientist, Australian.
No, I've not heard of him before.
So he was a neuroscientist that held to the mind-body problem.
Right.
Yeah. So he also showcased how hypostasis works with respect to that at the quantum mechanical level in the brain. The point is that Christian theology says that God joins his divine nature, which in itself is infinitely beyond, right, to the terrestrial part, which is infinitely less. That is the ultimate version of hypostasis, where two extremes are able to not mix, but have a type of, there's like a bridge between them. It's very complicated.
But you've used a bunch of things that I do understand, but how do I know that actually refers to anything? Like, and you've not just made up this like description of something that's kind of metaphorical and.
So, the word was invented to because of that thought experiment with that hypothetical philosophical notion that was brought up by the ancient Greeks. That was then a brilliant leeway into explaining then the incarnation of the Logos tabernacling in human flesh. And then that becomes then the general Christian belief of, the God-man Jesus. Why? In other words, the fact that he's God-man because he's in hypostasis. So that all the more that's the essence of the gospel, is resurrection is possible through that, because in other words, theosis is possible through the resurrection because we're joined with Jesus, because he's joined his divine nature with our terrestrial nature.
So I just wanted to point out, I've got a couple things in the chat. Susan wants Pine Creek can't see Susan because he's got Susan blocked, I guess, and I think it has to do with her being a mod on Mike Winger's channel, and maybe she blocked Pine Creek on Mike Winger's channel. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happened there, but I just want to say there's a little back and forth in the chat here that I see. Enigma Conjecture says, SJ and Rob, the architect is the creative force that through deep time ordered the mathematically structured cosmos. Ask Nathan what breathed fire into the equations.
Well, I mean, I just don't know what he means by that. Like, what does he mean? What breathed? Like, I've never come across an equation that's on fire. Obviously, he means it in like a metaphorical sort of sense. But
Meaning there's beauty in it, there's life.
Yeah, but there's beauty in like poems that don't really mean anything, or artwork that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like, I don't know what he means.
Is there beauty? Is there beauty in it grenade exploding?
It depends what you mean. Like there could be potentially.
Sure. If you, in other words, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? If I wanted to go about showing, fluid dynamics or something with respect to all the way the particles move and distribute in the grenade explosion, I could do that. So mathematically, I can show, look, out of chaos, I can show how beautiful chaos looks. But then just say the sound, like just bang, bang. That's meaningless. You need structure for the sound to be somewhat appealing. And again, that in itself is relative, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's like, depending on how you look at things, you can draw out meaning even from something as basic as just a grenade exploding.
It just seems to me that the only necessary conditions for someone to perceive something as beautiful is for them to be capable of perception and have some kind of idea of what beauty is.
Exactly.
But that doesn't make the question of what breathes fire into the equations meaningful to me, or tell me anything about whether a god exists or anything. Like
basically, we have a unique property that animals don't. That's sentience. So why
wait, animals don't have sentience? What are you sure? Like when would you like kick a dog? Would you torture like a cat?
Would a dog contemplate Schrodinger's equations?
Well, they have a different neural network to us. I mean, maybe like a dolphin could under the right conditions or something. I don't know.
Because the symbolism behind math is something that is ultimately based on logic. That can't be broken down, can't be broken apart. It has to work one way.
Well, for example, what do you mean has to work one way?
Because, for example, everything is forward-looking. So does an animal...
Wait, what does that mean? Everything? Do you mean people like our eyes physically are forward-looking?
Everything. Your house, your car.
They're sideways looking like animals, right?
No,
like
no. The shape... No. Everything has a front and a back.
Well, there's different...
The car... Like, why is that the case? And why do...
Well, that's just... I'd be like
symmetry.
a nominalist about that. Like, that's just because we're just defining it that way. Like, that's a feature of it. Like, it doesn't have an objective front. Like, that's just like... It's just a way that my brain passes things up in the world because I use tools and things.
Like humans are symmetry from what... Like, if you cut a human in half, directly top to bottom, there's symmetry. But if you look at it like starfish... And you can cut it in different other ways. But with a human, you can't cut them from the waist because they don't look the same. Like, there's different forms of symmetry, I would say. It's not like everything's one way. If everything was one way, then maybe there's evidence for a creator, but like there's many different forms of symmetry in nature and the development of everything, really.
See, I think I look at the Fibonacci sequence and I look at some of the cells and I look at all of the, DNA structure and the DNA genome. I think when you look at that kind of stuff, you feel like there has to be a source or a designer because it's so complex and so incredibly beautiful in so many ways. Like the earth is just so incredibly beautiful. Nature, the cosmos, all of this stuff points to a creator who has a sense for beauty, and he's instilled that in us. And he's instilled in us this desire to know him. And I think that, I feel like a lot of this stuff that we see out there outside points to God. And when you dig deep into science, I think science points to God.
I'm not sure that that's true. And I think that, so academic philosophers are aware of this, that the natural explanations don't necessitate a God. So then the move they actually make is to ask what grounds like natural laws themselves, because the laws seem so it's just kind of pushing the goalpost back from where natural theology would kind of say, look at the complexity of the eye or whatever, and look at teleology in the world. And it seems that we've sort of like done away with a lot of those things, but then just pushed the explanation back. And then there's a few metaphysicians who say certain things about, well, there's personal and scientific explanations, and so the natural laws need a personal explanation. But I think that at that point is just grasping at straws, because I think a personal explanation only makes sense nominally within like the material world, and it is also reducible to a scientific explanation and so forth. So.
Let me just ask this question, because I've had it posted up here for a little while, but I have what do you think is important if you only have 5 minutes with someone before they were to die? For the Christian perspective, I think he's asking details of creation or the gospel. And then we can ask maybe the atheists, if you guys want to ask what you think would be important. So I'll just show that too. Okay, so does anyone want to ask? I mean, I would actually do, if I were left with 5 minutes, and I have actually been, I'm going to tell you guys what I did one time when I was in a hospital room. I was in a hospital room with a really good Jewish friend of mine. You guys are going to think I'm so bad, but she was literally on her deathbed. She died that same day. And I remember what I said to her. I just held her hand and I said John 3:16 to her, and she squeezed my hand when I said that in kind of a very positive way. And so, and she kind of moved her eyebrows, because she had unfortunately suffered a pretty bad case of cancer. And so anyway, so those were my last words. And I felt like she was going to be seeing Jesus. And I thought that was well, that's just what I said. I don't know. What do you guys, what would you say to somebody if you had about 5 minutes left with them?
I think I'd see what they want to say.
She couldn't talk.
I've only been in that situation one time, back when I was sort of like an atheist, or maybe transitioning. This is 11 years ago. But basically, an instructor teacher of mine from high school, she dying of cancer. She pretty much fell into a coma. And I wasn't really emotional. It is just in those moments you honor, you give a lot of respect and honor to the fact that, yeah, welcome to chaos, right? Welcome to real life. This will affect 100% of us, right? So it was more, I sort of approached it more according to the doctors, apparently she could hear what I was saying. So I just honored her as a teacher first. And I was letting her know, she was agnostic, but I was letting her know that my Opa, my testimony, my Opa passed away May 2010. So I sort of very briefly just said, that actually happened to me a couple of months ago. And I just want to let you know that I've started to really wrestle with what you're about to face. And she also did, funnily enough, she did that same sort of reaction with the eyebrow thing. And all I said was, I wish you peace, and I hope to see you soon, or see you again, or something like that. But it was like, I wasn't like preaching to her. It was just more of, this is where I'm at, so like at the moment, because she was aware of before she fell into the coma, she was aware of my Opa's passing. So then she fell into a coma like 2-3 months later, and then she passed away 2-3 months after that. So it's just if she could see where I'm at right now, it would be very, if we could have that discussion now, it would be very interesting. But I sort of like was giving her a hint that I'm on a very big journey, which is now 10 years in the making. So yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I have to say, I did say a lot of other things to her. I wasn't just with 5 minutes in the hospital room. I was actually in the hospital room for a couple of hours. And so it was in that couple of hours, I did say that one verse, but I definitely said a lot of other things, like that we loved her, and we were going to watch after her son. He's in our neighborhood, and our neighbors, actually, everyone really took it upon themselves to take care of him. And he was adopted by another family, and that Stacy was really good friends with, and because what happened was her husband died about 3 months after that, and I think he died of a broken heart, which was a real shame.
And so
I just want to chime in. So StripperLicker says it was all about you at that moment, Rob. Which, to be honest, I find that to be exceedingly rude. Because I'm pretty sure I said what I said. If you rewind the video, I said I honored her first as a teacher, and you're presuming a lot because you don't know the discussions her and I had before she slipped into that coma. And so basically now in that moment, in the final moment where I knew, yep, this is it, our discussions are going to end very soon, I wanted to let her know that I will be okay because of her mentorship in my life. And so, yeah, it has nothing to do with me. I'm just saying, it's like, anyway.
I think as a teacher, because I'm a teacher, and if I had a student who came in my hospital room and basically told me that because of some of the work that I'd done, he or she is here right now, the fact that you went there is pretty amazing, and you showed up and you showed all that love to her. I think that's wonderful, and that would probably make her feel really, really good. And so,
yeah.
What about you two, Mr. Parker or Nathan? Do you guys want to say what you'd say in the last 5 minutes?
I would, respect them, like, tell them, like, all your things are gone. Like,
Can't really hear.
Yeah, you're kind of real soft, Parker.
Okay, hold on. Let me just move this up. I would tell them, like, we would take care of their, like, stress, like if they had kids or whatever. Tell them they don't have to worry about that. Respect them as a person and tell them, like, you lived a good life. You did all this. You should be proud. And then just, like, calmly just tell them, like, everyone loves you. If this was someone I knew personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those are good. Very good. I see RC Apologist wants a link, so I just put a link in here. Should we just open this up and not go back to the video right now?
Whatever. Whatever you want to do. Like, I mean, personally, I find it pretty cringy watching myself, but I like whatever you want to do, SJ. I'm cool with.
All right, so maybe I'll stop sharing the video for now and just kind of open it up to a conversation. And if anyone wants to ask questions in the audience, this is an open conversation. So if anyone also who's in the audience who hasn't, like Pine Creek, I was on a stream and Pine Creek was on it not too long ago, and it was on Nathan's channel, and so that was kind of fun. So Craig was in there too. I don't know if so.
He broke Craig.
Yeah.
Craig.
Yeah. So and Vera, I don't know, is Vera there today with you, Nathan?
She's.
Oh, there she is. So that's
Here's some ASMR for you, V, while you study.
So actually, going back to what Braxton's big question was, is there anything out there that atheism can explain better than Christianity, or that Christianity can explain better than atheism? Is there any facts that we agree on, something in this world that
the resurrection accounts?
So see, I don't see atheism as an explanation for that, because are you saying swoon? Are you picking a particular theory? Are you saying Jesus never died or something? Or how are you reconciling all the information that we have?
Well, so how about, say if I was like a Buddhist, right, and I was saying this morning when I went outside, I just really felt the presence of my ancestors. What would you think of that? What would you think that was?
If you went outside and you felt the presence of your ancestors?
If I went to Costa to get a coffee this morning. I don't know if that exists outside of England, but let's say I'm a Buddhist and I went to Costa to get my coffee, and I just really felt that my ancestors were like looking out for me. And then there was like this flickering light, like a street light that had gone out, and it was flickering, and it just felt to me like that was, my aunt telling me that that she's there watching over me. Like, what would you think that was?
I think I could, in a high 90% confidence, would say it's just your brain making that up in the sense that, for example, because I was very close with my Opa, whenever I walk into his room, his study, it could be a scent, could be a smell, could be maybe the way the light bounces around in the room. Just obviously memories, prop up, and it's like not now, but I used to. You could sort of like imagine a presence, and in other words, I would just leave it more at a sort of like a. I didn't go down like the new agey type. It was more sort of like a self-reflection of, well, I'm pretty sure Opa would like me to now move forward and be more of that man, I guess, right? He would like to see me grow up into like a, and so I just leave it at that.
There are a lot of people who claim that right as somebody dies, that they suddenly have this vision of that person, or the person appears to them later in dreams, and those kind of things. I think that's kind of an interesting thing that some people have said, and it could be their minds manufacturing some of that. But I feel like in some of the cases, it's kind of just really interesting. Like I had a friend whose older sister died when they were little. When we were all little, we were like, I don't know. I don't know exactly what age she was. I want to say she was 4 or 5 when this occurred. But the older sister used to always play with the dishwasher. And after she died, it was kind of strange because that night the dishwasher came on by itself and started running. And it was something that freaked out the family. Yeah. But those are kind of interesting questions.
Well, the thing is, though, I think this isn't me saying that it could only possibly be a natural explanation, but that we now have good enough natural explanations that we need some kind of there need to be something else that couldn't be explained by the natural explanations that for us to say, well, these just don't cover it. And what could that something else be? Like in the case of people with brain damage, people with schizophrenia, etc. We know that they are likely to see ghosts, or see, certain regions of the brain are damaged to see apparitions or whatever. We know what sleeping does, what dreams do, and why people are, if someone dies, you experience something traumatic and your brain's trying to process that. We know why people are likely to see it. We know about people with synesthesia who are gonna confuse the senses and see different things. So what sort of thing is there that where it guarantees that it's actually the person rather than one of these natural phenomena that explains why it's happening? What sort of thing would we have to see?
Okay, so I can also tell you of experiences in India that do fit the very 1% sort of residual, kind of like the UFO thing, residual UFOs, for example, where it's a very rare, in other words, it's supernatural, spiritual, superstitious sort of phenomena. It's in the genuine sense is very, very rare. So, for example, the Fatima miracle. Are you familiar with that one?
Only familiar from watching Cameron say extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence to Tyler McNabb when he tried to convince him, which I found so ironic. But
so I'm not Roman Catholic, but I know Roman Catholics love to use that to say Mary appeared to thousands of people and all that, all simultaneously. The sun, they say the sun was dancing in the sky. I find it curious that when you actually lay out a pattern in UFO studies with respect to residual UFOs, it's always to do with some form of demonology. So is it possible that you have an apparition of a type of sinister force that I can't help but see pattern itself right throughout? For example, when Muhammad encounters the jinn.
What's a sinister force? Sorry, what do you mean by sinister force?
So, in other words, in Christian parlance, so this is nothing but, Satan masquerading as an angel of light, deception, agendas to lead people a certain direction, and so on. Idolism.
See, I believe that.
The whole Fatima thing is nothing but a very subtle, sort of like a reconfirmation of this is why you're Catholic. And I don't believe, theologically speaking, that the Roman Catholic Church has the right theology. So in other words, if there's intelligent evil, in very rare circumstances, it can sort of like approach in these very remarkable ways, but not all the time. It has to be just one-off sort of events here and there.
Could it like
let me first introduce, because we have 3 more people who just joined in, so I just wanted to make sure that they can say hi. So we have RC Apologist, Craig Reed, and Jacob, also known as StripperLicker, has joined the crowd here. So you guys want to just say hello and introduce yourselves?
Hello.
Hi.
Okay.
StripperLicker's here.
Hi, I'm Jacob.
Hi, StripperLicker. I don't think I've streamed with them yet.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. One big happy family.
Hey, Archie, it's been a while, man. It's good to hear your voice.
We say the same for you, man.
Hope you've been well.
I had a COVID scare about it last week, but other than that, I'm kind of fine afterwards. I've realized how serious even the stress of it can be.
Did you had COVID, or you didn't? You just had the scare that you thought you had it?
I had the scare at that point, to the point that I ended up getting something I heard about called COVID-somnia, where just having the worry and fear of that does kind of put you in an insomnia for a bit. Like whenever you're trying to go to sleep, like you feel like the air just pops right out of you and you can't breathe.
Wow.
And also, just quickly, since you're on the point with Nathan, in the Eastern cultures, let me put it this way, in the Eastern cultures like India and so on, you know this perception that you and I have, like you have atheism versus theism. In other words, the theists have to try and defend a theistic sort of worldview. Imagine the Eastern religion, or just Eastern way of life, literally inverted, where it's natural for the paranormal to happen, and no one raises an eyebrow. They're just like, oh yeah, that's just the typical.
It's natural for people to think that, but I think that this is the case in America and most of Britain, and like, I mean, I think that this is explained by just how bad humans are at forming beliefs, and we are.
But Nathan, you haven't been there. I've been there. I've seen things that will make you go, interesting.
Yeah, can you share one of those? Because you have shared that before on my channel, but I think that it was a kind of a fascinating story that you had with the.
Yeah, so the other day I decided to finally give a listen to Capturing Christianity's interview with that exorcist.
Bone-chilling interview. You need the anchoring effect, right, to anchor people to the word bone-chilling. So as they preconceive, so they form a bias about what to expect before they actually hear the data.
I carefully listened to, I went in skeptical, kind of like, I'm not really interested, but let's just give this a listen. I was bored. I was actually surprised to see that. So, for example, SJ, because you interviewed Heiser, for example, and I'm very in tune with the scholarship in that, he didn't really put it in too many words, but I was tracking on, Heiser would actually agree with him on a lot of things theologically. So, in other words, the whole Watcher tradition and all that. So in India, I was about 6 years old, and I left India when I was 9. We had to escape Muslim persecution. I remember very clearly, there's 4 festivals in the year, main festivals. There's many, but these particular 4. And one specifically was where if you're sick, or if you've got some form of like evil eye attached to you, or like, this is again all superstitious stuff. There's a festival all night where the yogi and the guru, whatever, they throw white powder on you, and it's meant to wash you of whatever that's contaminating you. Next day, my mom's taking me out for market shopping, and the markets are just on the street. I was with a friend from one of my schools, and as usual, we were sort of, by the way, everyone is sort of self-aware. Don't do this, don't touch that. And so mom obviously is telling me, stay away from that white stuff. So sure enough, my friend and I decide to leap over one big mound of it. And we both land in it. Now I'm freaking out because I know my mom's going to kill me because they were pretty harsh in the sense of that, I guess you could say, that European sort of strictness and upbringing and all that. So, oh, by the way, to answer the question that was earlier, yes, I do have German background. So, Opa Oma. But he, 5 seconds later, starts shouting out in Hindi, a mix of Hindi and Telugu and all these languages in the region. His eyes roll back, snorting blood out, really gripping, like doing weird connotations like this, and just like yelling and just on the ground. And now he's an absolutely sane guy. I've known him for like 2 years when I started school with him. None of that was, he didn't suffer with anything. I was freaking out, wondering if maybe I hit his head or maybe I don't know, something happened to him in that fall. We brought this lasted for about 2 hours. We brought his folks over. They obviously brought like yogis and all to try and help him out. St. John's Church, this is, if you want to know, this is in Hyderabad, India. So St. John's Church is just like 10 minutes away from where this happened. It's a Catholic church. We took him there, and my parents are not Catholic, but they're like, well, this Catholic priest should do because, you know, he's under the Christian veneer. And
yeah, they should have probably gone to the hospital, right?
Oh yeah, no, we had doctors on the scene, all that, and
all that
kind of like a Mark V scenario. You know, the guy with the chains, that strength. He had supernatural strength. He's only 6, and the way he.
How did you know? Sorry, how did you know it was supernatural strength?
No, I'm speaking now, grown up, thinking back on that memory, because that memory is very, vivid. So,
but is examining a memory a good way to establish something?
Or wait, just let him finish.
I'm quite confident that what I'm remembering is, I'm not fudging the memory. That, like, what I remember is exactly what I'm saying. So, grown men trying to hold down his arm, and he's literally sort of beating them in that sort of like that arm wrestle. He's able to overpower. So in that overpowerment, we were able to just about get him into a car. Back then we had those Volkswagen. We put him in the car. He was able to smash, the back seat windows and so on. But we were able to then drive straight to St. John's Church. And within 10 minutes, he then succumbed to a complete like sort of calm and quietness, and then just he didn't remember any of that. But the sort of like freaking out, because I was we all went together. Those sort of events, everyone goes together. Even strangers like follow through. They're just like, what the heck is this? And then that shrieking when the priest was sort of exorcising him. And obviously, and the priest was calm, by the way. The priest was just doing his, with the smoke thing, and he's just saying the words in Latin, and he's just like, and then within 10 minutes, he's healed.
Did you try any other priests from any other religions?
Yes. Some Hindu yogis came and tried to do it. This is 2 hours.
What about Jewish rabbis?
There's no Jewish rabbis there. No.
They would have really they would have done it in half the time as well.
Okay. So here's my point. Coming into Australia, it's so sterile of all that chaos and weirdness. I felt like, what the heck is this? Have they literally sprayed Australia with sterile chemicals? So then, there's none of this on the streets. It's just so clean and just quiet. But that's what maintained my atheism moving forward, because of that very subtle quietness, where when I started to then rethink religion and spirituality, I started to notice back what I remember, and my opa dying moving forward, and seeing early church history and demonology and so on, and hence the Catholic priest that Cameron interviewed. It's just a reconfirmation of all the data points, like what Heiser gets at and so on. So
I mean, that goes with what Capturing Christianity said with his channel when he had that exorcist. And one thing I did like about that exorcist is he said they try to exhaust all of the other possibilities because, in case somebody's mentally, I mean, it sounds to me, I'm actually quite convinced by Rob's story, to be honest. And I know, I know
Nathan, you have to explain to me naturalistically why white powder, which at the end of the day was just flour. It's just they just make dough out of that stuff. I mean, you could say, oh, there could be chemicals in there, or some sort of like, I don't know, some highfalutin drug was just placed in that conveniently in that lump there, and maybe he snorted it or something, and then he just had a reaction. Okay, but he's saying things, and he has a certain strength. In other words, some entity was indeed controlling him, and I didn't get affected by it. Why is it just him?
I don't know. Sorry, you want to come in, Mr.
Yeah, it could be a medical condition. Like there's I don't know what exactly called, but like if you overdose on something, or I forget what it was exactly, but like you can get extreme strength. Like it's like when all your muscles just go all out on it, and like you can have extreme strength against adults, like a 6-year-old fighting a 30-year-old man or whatever. That's possible. And speaking like different languages, that is usually seen in children with bilingual parents, or in communities where they speak different languages. I think, I don't know, like it's possible he could be, because you mentioned he was speaking different not languages, but like dialects.
Yeah, but in Hindi and in Telugu, so Telugu is a more rarer. It's harder to speak than Hindi. Is just like English over there. He was saying things that what spooked me was just my friend doing this weird stuff, right? Like what we would call a seizure today. So that was freaking me out. But what was kind of freaking me out more was just what he was saying. Kind of like what the priest was telling Cameron. When these entities want to assert something, they're in a very intelligent way. They'll say certain things and they'll react a certain way. And then, why did he freak out the most when the Catholic priest was doing the exorcism? Because if the Catholic priest is no different to the Hindu yogi trying to do the same thing, it shouldn't affect it. If it's just a purely naturalistic thing, he should just be behaving the same way until he maybe dies or passes out or whatever. Like,
I mean, I don't know the exact words each of these priests said, so it could be, I don't know if the guy was like really loud, or like there's some, I don't know. It's sensitivity to sound is also a symptom you can think of. Like if they were yelling at him, he could have a more adverse reaction, I would say.
And the priest was very quiet, and he was singing. Actually, he was like it sounded like he was singing, but in this Latin type language. Because I used to attend St. John's as a child. So
let me ask you this: Rob, is there any possibility it was something other than flour? Like somebody said, what if it's cocaine or something? I can't imagine that the expense of putting a pile of cocaine into the road for anyone to go.
That stuff doesn't. Not in Hyderabad, mind you. That is a very unlikely. That's what I'm getting at. That's what's so funny. It's like you're talking about a third world country so Hindus don't practice cocaine.
They don't practice cocaine.
Well, it's got to be extremely. I think it's extremely expensive, isn't it?
It's flour because it's flour because the markets are there, and we eat that stuff, and it's just literally the night prior. It's just because the markets are there, they take that stuff, and it's sort of like a like meaning the owners of those places take that as a sacrifice to give to, the yogis to then use. So it's sort of like their tithe. Use this. This is our contribution to society, so to speak. Because again, of that superstition, right?
Well, Rob, what do you think did happen then? So did the demon? So you think it was a demon, and then maybe you could explain. So did the demon like push his soul out of the mind and occupy his mind, or where was the demon? How did the demon interact with his neurons to cause them to contract? How do demons do this sort of thing? Where's the demon even located to push? Like, what the hell kind of like explanation are we positing here?
Just like Agent Smith took over Bane in Matrix Revolutions,
the fictional story, which doesn't require what you mean, like through CGI or
no. Do you remember that? Do you remember Smith embodying?
Yeah,
and how they think about
but
the neural...
I don't think that that's something that can happen. Like that's
no.
CGI.
I'm just saying that is such an apt, probably the closest pop culture sort of engagement with how something that is not carbon-based, which is Agent Smith, he's purely electrical and software. But that analogy of the spiritual entity sort of occupying the space of the being is exactly what we see in the Bible and we see throughout human culture.
So does the Matrix include like revealed truths?
I believe the movie is written by Christians, by the way, and then it was sold to the Wachowskis. So there's a lot in the Matrix that has very good grounded Christian theology.
So should like people who want to make like progress in like physics, for example, like study the Matrix?
No, I'm not even saying that at all.
But it seems like you're saying like this depiction in the Matrix, it accounts for some phenomena which our modern version of like physics, chemistry, and biology can't explain. Demon possessions, and you're saying that this is accounted for and depicted in the Matrix in an accurate way, or unless I'm completely misunderstanding.
I think he's just using it as a kind of a parallel way to say.
I'm using it as a parallel where the way it works in the rationality of that story. Now the mechanics of how that works, obviously, I don't know. But it's interesting how it makes rational sense that if you have all this build-up, that Smith can actually do something like what he does. I see that overlap very nicely. To use that as a polemic with respect to our reality and how demons can occupy our space. So in other words, let me put it this way. According to early Christians, demons are not fallen angels. And Heiser gets into this. Fallen angels are a class in and of themselves. Demons are disembodied Nephilim. Their purpose is to re-embody. That's why Jesus says these demons look for bodies to, go back into and so on. Now, the mechanics of how that works, that now you're going into quasi-supernatural stuff.
Well,
but the point is...
what I'm saying is how, so we can see, for example, when people have like... variance in like the ions in that the action potentials in their cells mean that they like contract in bizarre ways or produce kind of like spasms and things that shouldn't be there. Well, if both of those result in this, I'm saying like, how can we tell when one is the result of someone having genes, some kind of gene switched on that shouldn't be or whatever, or damage to some physiological mechanism, or like a demon creeping in there and doing that, like how...
Now,
and if it is a demon, how can we
that's a great question, because then that sort of brings it back home to my friend who never suffered with that again, because I was with him for another 3 years before I had to leave, and we spent pretty much every night hanging out.
Let me first say thank you to John. He says, when people eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the seed took root in their mind, Trojan infection, remote access, and then add that the individual may not have the Lord's armor on. So we have this belief, a lot of it comes from Ephesians with Paul saying that we need to have armor on, we need to have Christianity, our belt of Christianity to sort of protect us from that.
And John, Nathan, I'll give you some homework to do. John Eccles wrote a book before he passed away, How the Self Controls Its Brain. And very famously, he's well known. This quote is attributed to him. The brain is a machine that a ghost operates. So this whole notion of ghost in the shell, all that cyberpunk stuff, has its roots in the mind-body problem, which there have been proponents, very good science proponents of that philosophical position.
Right.
And there still are
Before-
even today.
I don't know about that one. Not most neuroscientists, that's for sure. Mostly Christian philosophers who
Are you
are
sure about that?
theologically motivated. Yeah, I'm sure that it is not the majority of neuroscientists who are dualists.
For example, Kandel.
I'm not saying, no, I didn't say there's no. I'm saying the majority of neuroscientists are not dualists. That is not the direction that the evidence pushes. There are no scientific papers which will verify that dualism is true, because it isn't a scientific hypothesis. It's a metaphysical one.
There's a lot of progress made with the mind body in such a way that I think you'll smile at this. It's become a lot more physical and naturalistic than non-naturalistic.
No,
In other words,
I know, like
Eccles will go down the quantum mechanical.
All this
route
stuff
for
that was meant to be like animating the body, the soul, and stuff. As we've figured out biology and how the mind works, how neurons work, it's like consciousness of the gaps. I'm not saying that there aren't genuine problems there for how you get private first-person access. There is a genuine thing that we don't understand, but it's definitely being pushed out. This view that there's spooky stuff.
Well, wait, let me get to, because Jacob said he just popped in here because he wanted to clarify something to Rob, and he's got to go in a minute. So I wanted to see if he wanted to clarify what he wanted to say.
Yeah, thanks, SJ. Sorry, didn't mean to sort of backtrack on this. I just wanted to address you just briefly, Rob, give context to my question that seemed to be rude. I wanted to note that it was a question. There was a question mark at the end. That's not how you read it. That's okay.
Okay.
And it was a question. And the second thing I want to say just briefly before I give context is, when we're in chat, it's very slow to type, and some complex things are being said, and so sometimes sort of a pithy, terse, and something that appears quite rude may be what comes out. What I wanted to say was it was a question because it came from my personal experience, which is what most of our views are wrapped around, not just our analyzations, but how we experience things. My personal experience of being with someone who was conscious, they were dying. We knew they were dying at that moment, and they passed. And so that was a very profound experience, and it's something that in the last couple of decades, it still remains on my mind, going through all of the things that took place at that moment. And then the second part of my personal context is being in that position myself, where I thought I was at a moment dying in a hospital situation, and knowing what was going on through my mind. So here was my point. One of the things that we normally do when we communicate with other people, when we're trying to connect to them, is we're trying to think, well, what is relating? What has happened to me? What do I think inside? What do I feel that relates to what they may be experiencing? And how can I communicate that to them so that they see I'm relating to them? And I want to give them some comfort, perhaps some solace. And in the last 15 years since I've been through this reviewing of two experiences that I had, actually there were three, and then trying to learn about the psychology of it, I've come to the understanding, could be wrong, that usually when we do that, when that's how we say things to people, we've kind of slipped into a bit of a selfish mode. Even though we're trying to do something kind, we're talking to them about us. They literally are dying. This is having experienced what was in my mind when I thought I was dying, and fortunately I didn't, was I couldn't have cared less about what was inside the minds of those around me, other than my loved ones, my children. I was feeling concerned for what was going to be in their lives when I was gone. But as far as what gave solace to me was only the expressions of love, care, gratitude, and anything that was in rationale, like, oh, Dad, don't think this or don't think that, is kind of like a selfish naivety on the part of the one who's speaking. It's really thinking about, I mean, you're thinking about the other person, but really you're connecting with what's in yourself. And that was just my context. And so my question wasn't meant to be a veiled statement of indictment toward you or toward your motivations. It was really sort of that question, because now whenever just my experience, whenever I am faced with trying to give solace in a situation where I care to someone, I find myself being keenly aware of how these thoughts pop up about what I've experienced, and I find myself being keenly aware to not try to recount those to the other person, because they very likely don't matter. It's very likely something that is making me feel better, not them. So anyway, that was kind of the context. So I did want to just pop in and say that so that you weren't left with the idea that I was just trying to give a short insult to you.
No, Jacob. I really appreciate you giving that context, and I think that was a good sort of closure on that. I apologize, by the way, for that knee-jerk reaction I had.
Perfectly understandable.
So
after you said it, I thought, wow, that did sound rude.
Yeah, no, it, like when you read it that way, but I think it was in the heat of the discussion in the moment. But yeah, what you share, you see, I was very. This is sort of a private thing I'm going to share, but I might as well just say it. But it has dawned on me more, maybe in the last year and a bit. I've lost, for example, this year alone, I've lost many family members already. Like 2 aunts passed this year within the space of 3 months. And young as well, and so my mum's 2 sisters. Both times. Oh yeah, the whole thing is very sad, all that stuff. But you are the emotions you're describing and that mindset you're describing. It's I don't know how, but I've sort of, I don't know if numbness is the right word to describe the overall sort of scenario that you were getting at, or that you're getting at. So I get exactly what you're saying with regards to selfishness, because that's exactly the sort of thing that was dawning on me back in 2010 when, say, my Opa died, right? But he wasn't aware, he was already dead. And then I was, that's to give you to reassure you, that's the fuller context I'm sort of trying to give with respect to when my teacher was sort of aware when I was talking to her. And in other words, I was talking to her exactly the way you put it. And now all these years later, even at 2 funerals this year, I was sort of being very, people were wondering, why am I being very cold? Or I was appearing to be cold, but I didn't want to say it because I thought people wouldn't understand where I'm coming from. But pretty much you just echoed what I was saying. And that is this notion of, this constant, like, for example, the next day when I spoke to people about, I just went to a funeral, this constant, like, never-ending sympathy thing, which is fine. Like, I know people give sympathies, but it's just like that doesn't really do any good anyway. And
I think you're right. You know, no matter what our belief system is, death of someone that we know or around us that we can relate to, that we aren't so separated from that there's a total disconnect. Death with anyone is incredibly impactful and profound. And at least in my view, oftentimes we don't even have the words to correctly express all the things that are being processed within us. And we might not even understand it. And so we often have to, in social situations, in a funeral or something, we have to step to social conventions, phrases and things. We're doing what we feel is right, because inside, it's not just a show. Inside, we may be feeling for that other person, especially in the case of a funeral of someone we don't know, but we go to a funeral of someone who's maybe a good friend and they've lost their mother and we never knew the mother or something like that. But, and in my personal situation, without going into detail, when each of my parents passed away, it was in not good circumstances on either one. And while I loved and cherished both of them dearly, I didn't even process and respond and react the same way with either one. And I don't even know why. But it was vastly different. And I don't think it was because of a difference in relationship. It's part of the human experience. But the thing is that we try to communicate. And the question was, someone's 5 minutes left. And so the idea of the concept as it was presented was not like we only have 5 minutes with them, then we're never going to see them again, and then 20 years from now they're going to die. But dying, they're going to be gone in 5 minutes, and we have 5 minutes. What do we say? And it's posed with the theological, which aspect of Christianity would we talk to them about? And it kind of went to some responses, and mine went to something a little different. But the idea is that it's something that's hard for us to connect to inside, let alone to another person. And so as we're trying to, and how many times in our life stand next to someone as they die?
Sorry.
That's very rare. That's all. I was just saying, that's a very rare situation.
So the words, this is the last thing I said before I left the room. The famous poet that said, we are shadows and dust, which was a famous line that was used also in the Gladiator movie. So when I had my discussions with Miss, her name is Miss Jones. I'll just keep it at that. She was very in tune with all the ramifications of psychology, philosophy, all that stuff in school, and we would have these discussions during lunchtime and all that. And she loved Greco-Roman poetry. That's hence the shadows and dust phrase. So I guess you could say she did have a sort of like flirtation with spirituality, like sort of like spiritual type person, but she's definitely agnostic. And a little bit of melancholy and also nihilistic because of that shadows and dust sort of perspective. So I'm basically echoing your very interesting sort of like closure showcasing the subtleness of the selfishness of certain people, and they are completely unaware of that, right? But I'm not saying I was fully aware of it, but it was dawning on me in the moment. And that's what I told her. It's like, hey, remember when you said we are shadows and dust? But I then clarified that by saying, but I want to know if that is truly the case. And then I left the room after I said that.
Very interesting. Very interesting, yes. I appreciate you sharing that part of it. It's very, it certainly is something that is a highly, while we have similarities amongst us in our experiences and something like this, it is something that's very highly personal, very, very strong. Well, listen, thank you very much.
I really appreciate it, Jacob. Really do.
Yeah, for taking the few minutes, and thank you, SJ. I love your streams as always.
Oh, thank you.
I'm gonna say goodbye and take care. It was a pleasure talking to you, Rob.
Thank you, Jacob. You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. So RC, did you want to pipe up here a little bit? You haven't said too much.
I mean, like, I've just been listening to the conversation so far, waiting until, like, I guess another topic comes up, because, I mean, unless I was here before, I wouldn't know too much on how to, like, contribute to, like, what Rob's pointing out for some of his cases.
You guys want to talk about, because one of the things that was talked about in Braxton Hunter's video is he talked about, he had questions. What happened was Braxton made a video that said these are 10 questions that atheists have a hard time answering, and one of them had to do with near-death experiences. And so I wanted to see what any of you had a take on how to explain some of those ones where, like, someone's in a hospital and they don't have, their mind and their heart, everything seems to have stopped, and suddenly they have this experience of knowing what happened in the room or outside of the room even. You guys heard of any of those?
I don't have too much of an opinion or put too much value on the near-death experiences, because they can vary from person to person regarding basically contradictory visions, and therefore I don't really consider them to have too much of a value, but rather what is the message or the intent behind the supposed, like, experiences that one receives at that point.
Anybody else have a thought on that? We can move on. We can go to a different topic too.
You know what I want to really experience? I want to experience the resurrection with Nathan, right? Where we are in theosis, and then him and I perform jujitsu at that ontological level.
Hey, as long.
Well, I was going to say, from what you guys were saying before, I can't really see how any of those, like, descriptions were made sense of, like, on that worldview, where, like, if people are indestructible souls, I don't understand what's sad about people dying. And if people are just souls, why does it? Someone made a comment in the chat. If people are just atoms, then death is special. But if people are just souls, then why does that make it meaningful? Like, it doesn't seem. It seems to me that it's only this meaningful special event if it is finite. If it is the end.
You're echoing Paul in 1 Thessalonians 4, by the way, just so you know.
Sure.
Everything that comes out of your mouth is like you might as well regurgitate the Bible.
Well, I might be, but I don't see how this is, and how this leads to concluding that there is a soul.
Let me actually say something. Let me say something really quickly, because Susan actually asked a pretty good question about that, and I think this is building on what Nathan's getting at and what Susan was getting at. Is she was just talking about why is it that all cultures seek God, or they seek God as an explanation for so many of the events, or why do they believe in the supernatural? You don't find any cultures really that don't have people that endorse the supernatural. It seems like it's something that we've seen throughout history. And so how is that explained in a naturalistic perspective?
Well, so for example, we know that children prefer teleological explanations to scientific ones. So if you ask children, for example, why mountains exist, they'll give answers like, so animals can climb on them. They won't give answers like, because there's tectonic plates and lava underneath the earth, and the tectonic plates rub up, because they don't think scientifically. People naturally think teleologically. The same happens in people with Alzheimer's. People with Alzheimer's begin to prefer teleological explanations again, and this is what psychology shows. Basically, it's that like why people form these sorts of beliefs is because we frame the world in terms of what's familiar to us. What's familiar to us is like social human interactions, and so we anthropomorphize the world around us. We make inanimate objects animate. We form attachments to things that aren't sentient, like pillows and combs and toothbrushes, and that's the way we engage with the world, really, as primates.
But only we, the hominid, the Homo sapien hominid, does that. That's the sentience I was getting at a moment ago.
I don't know that that's precisely true. For example,
symbolism.
Well, if we look at other species of primate, for example, and the way that they look up to, the big alpha silverback, or that kind, like there's definitely analogous types of reasoning. If you look at other social animals like whales, for example, and the way they think about things, I mean, I don't know that me and you in this conversation really know enough to say that it isn't the case that any other mammals have exhibit similar psychological features. Like, we know that other neural networks also use this same kind of Bayesian reasoning to try and form beliefs about the world, and that they're prone to the same errors, like pigeon superstition, right? Like, we know about that. That happens in pigeons, that happens in people. These things are definitely consistent to different
we also species. We have to look at the history of religion in different cultures too. It's not like every other culture is like, all right, guys, let's think of a way, like there has to be a god or something. They didn't come to that conclusion. Not all cultures did that. Take, for example, the Aztecs, or not Aztecs, early Chile civilizations. They had a form of animalism, which was the belief that like some animals, like the jaguar, like turn into like a human, and that's how we have a chief or something. Like they did have supernatural beliefs. It wasn't, but they rooted it into natural things. Like they had a supernatural way of explaining things, but like it was based on naturalistic things, like animals.
I also want to say, because I've interviewed, so for example, Jeffrey Rose. He's an anthropologist that works in the Persian Gulf, doing early Holocene period, Pleistocene period studies, and I'm not saying you're saying this, Nathan. I'm just wondering. He dislikes when people sort of put down early humans as being primitive. He sees them not only as much as in the same capacity as you and me, as far as, so if we were to educate them in our Western culture, they'd be fine, like if you were to bring them up. But that being said, yes, their life is radically different to ours, right? Look at the ancient Near Eastern context in, say, the Old Testament. That in itself just shows how radically different. But they had a certain perception of reality and a certain like logic and rationality that, in their own right, it worked for them, and they were quite wise. This is going into the whole notion of knowledge versus wisdom. Just the wisdom aspect of it was remarkably sophisticated, rather than just having an accumulation of knowledge and then how to manipulate the knowledge to make technology the way we do. So that being said, these very wise, intelligent, very early humans themselves, in their artifacts, showcase a high religious propensity, and with respect to symbolism, music, all that stuff. And so even Jeff Rose is just like, look, at the end of the day, not you, but the people who supposedly criticize religion per se, or spirituality, it's like that. In other words, it's kind of like it's the couch potato, fat, lazy bum who watches a football game and starts to argue at the TV screen, this is how you're meant to kick the ball, when really he's not even in the field doing the work and actually seeing how the players are actually experiencing the game themselves. Like, if he was in the game, then he'd have the right to say those points. And that's how these anthropologists are reacting to when people sort of just have these off-the-cuff remarks like, "Oh, early humans were primitive and religion is superstitious," like a lot of the anthropologists roll their eyes.
Yeah, the Bronze Age. Oh, they're just Bronze Age shepherds and those kind of things, and goat herders, and that's very disparaging.
The famous goat herder thing by Aaron Ra, that sort of thing.
It's ridiculous. I mean, you go back there and you look at some of the sophistication that they had in making things like pyramids and poems and all the stuff that we see with Plato and Aristotle and Socrates and all of the different mathematicians back then. I mean, we've got some amazing people back then who must have been very hardy people, because look at the kind of cushy conditions we live under compared to what they've had to go through.
And Roman, as you know, Roman history, I mean, even Bart Ehrman says this in his books. If you want genuine superstition that makes Christianity look like an atheistic worldview, this is in his words, look at Roman historians and how superstitious their Caesars were, and just the general culture at the time and ancient Near East. Like, if you're talking about radical superstition, you won't find it in the Bible. That's what I find interesting with, when Ormond looks at the stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want to say hello to MPreziv. Sorry if I just messed up your name. You want to say hi?
Yeah, hi. Can you guys hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, great. I'm using a wireless microphone and headset. I don't know if it's got an echo.
I'm seeing V laugh.
What was that?
No, it's just, I don't worry about it.
I will say this, your voice kind of gives off like that Heath Ledger Joker voice, and I'm really digging that vibe right about now.
Thank you.
No problem.
Well, no, I just wanted to give a perspective on some of these the topics you were talking about, especially the near death and...
Sure,
bring Josh on. Josh, join the link.
Josh, I got a link here. Josh,
good to see you, Josh.
We'll even out the number of theists and non-theists. So right now we've got, and I don't know, MPreziv, I was looking at some of your chat. Are you Christian?
Yeah, it's impressive, like MPreziv, the name.
Oh, Preziv. Okay.
Yeah. It's a silly gamer tag that I've had for probably 20 years. So.
Oh, your gamer tag. That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay,
hey,
Josh, it's working.
Hope you're well, buddy. It's good to see you. I haven't spoken about it. It's good to see you.
Greg, don't do it. So what is your perspective on some of this stuff, Em?
Well, I mean, a lot of it I have is personal. Like I said, when I was 17, I went through chemotherapy, and there's a few things when I was in the hospital. I had a close friend, Charles, that had a mass in his chest, and he had passed one night, and there was some, I don't know even how to explain it. It was just a wash that came over me, that I felt something had happened, and then you hear that code go off over that something's wrong. It was in a children's ward as well, so they jump on top of stuff like that. But yeah, there was some kind of connection there. I mean, I've had car accidents where time stops and it goes down. I have a perspective from animation. I went to school for animation, so looking at animation and how that's broken down picture by picture, frame rate, your consciousness kind of does that when you have near-death experiences. Get into a car accident, people say, oh, time flashed in front of me, or like everything slowed down. Like, there's different things that are so outside of our experience here on Earth, reality, that I don't think we can even understand some of this stuff on a natural level, at least. But yeah, that's where I come from, at least.
That's pretty cool. I've been in 5 car accidents, and before the age of 23, 5 car accidents. I totaled 2 cars, totaled 2. I walked away from every one of them without even a scratch.
God bless.
Yeah. It's just like, how did I do that? I wrapped my parents' station wagon. That was my first one, right around a tree. I mean, I was a disaster on the road. I got my dad kicked off of State Farm. It was terrible. And so, but I look back on that, I'm like, who says you don't have a guardian angel? I'm sorry. Somehow, I don't know how I made it through life. I had a number of other things happen that I won't get into so much, but I want to say hi to V too. The famous Nathan's girlfriend is in the house.
Hi. I just wanted to ask whether you still drive, just so I can make sure to never go to Florida.
I do, but it's been many, many years since I actually have really low insurance rates because I haven't had an accident since then. So I drive much better now. I was a disaster though. I mean, I was switching the radio one time in a perfectly fine February afternoon, and the snow had just started melting, and I was cruising down this big country road, and all of a sudden I just lost control and I just hit a telephone pole. I mean, who does that?
I had a coworker that said he did that. He looked down to change the radio station for 1 second, and that was it. Car was around the pole. So
yeah,
it happens to everybody, I guess. I mean, I'll say that I had a bad experience falling asleep at the wheel for a second, and that ended the life of that car. So, things that happen, very easily. So, especially when you drive long hours, but yeah.
Yeah, that's scary.
Hey V, how you doing?
I'm
Just want to get Nathan's reaction.
He doesn't care. He's fine. He's just enjoying hating on everyone, I think.
Well, he said you smelled, so I'm just gonna tease him a little bit. Yeah.
As always, this is just projecting, right? This is like a classic psychological thing where you project your own securities.
You can only fight passive aggressive with passive aggressive.
It's classic. So V, are you now? I think both of you and Nathan are both agnostic or something like that. Aren't you from France?
No, I'm originally from Spain, and I lived in France when I was a teenager. But I'm not religious at all. I didn't really have an opinion on any of this until Nathan kind of dragged me into the whole thing. So I guess now I'm an agnostic, but mostly because I just don't have an opinion on any of it. I don't think we can know. He tries.
Craig's back too.
Excellent. The Craig number 1, as opposed to the other Craig, which is
William Lane Craig.
Yeah, that's the one.
WLC.
I have pretty bad dyslexia, and I've only just found this out at like 21. So I get names confused when they're too similar. So I can't tell Craig Reed and the other Craig apart, basically. There you go. That's my life story. That's all you need to know.
No, that's good. Were you raised as a Catholic since you're from Spain?
No, I was raised in like the Catholic setting, and we did all the party bits, but we didn't do any of the theology bits.
Taking the good stuff out of it and leaving the
Yeah. I never went to, well, I mean, I did go to church, but because I was interested in it, not with my parents or anything. I tried to, so in Spain you have confirmation and the other one. You do like 2 things while you're growing up. You go to church and take a vow. I don't know how it works, but I wanted to do one of them when I was like 15, and I tried to go to church and stuff, and they wouldn't let me. So that was the end of my religiosity.
You said Babylon?
Sorry, no, I said confirmation.
Oh, I must have misheard. I don't know. Somehow I heard the word Babylon. I'm thinking, what? Like.
Well, my accent's a bit of a mess. I wouldn't blame you.
Okay, so you said confirmation. Okay.
Yes.
Need to get a hearing aid, Rob.
I don't know why.
Yeah, you said you need to get a hearing aid.
Yeah, like or better yet, like he has a little earpiece in, and I basically just repeat everything for him since I'm already doing that at my job, and I just do it in a much more pleasant voice at this point.
You're already doing it at your job.
That's for sure, Aussie.
Yeah, we'll definitely try. Like they say, how much is it going to cost? Like it's going to cost $26.50, and then boom, there you go.
It's funny. Hey, Craig, are you able to talk? Are you able to?
If you can hear me, I can hear you guys.
Oh yeah,
I was cutting out a lot.
Oh good,
before.
yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, and everybody.
So you got any thoughts on these conversations?
Well, everybody refers to Craig or William Lane Craig as Craig, and when I was in Nathan's stream the other night, it got really confusing because people be like, "Oh, Craig, he's such an idiot." I'm like, "Wait, what?" but they're talking about William Lane Craig. That's how a lot of people refer to him.
Yeah. See, I actually when I started getting into apologetics, William Lane Craig was one of the first I started reading, and his stuff is great. I wouldn't call him an idiot. He's actually the best debater we have.
He's a good popularizer. That's what he's really good at. Like taking the like most people aren't going to read stuff like Planaja, but he's good at like taking it down and popularizing it so that a lot of people can, enjoy it. That's what he's really good at, I think.
Mm-hmm. Didn't you guys do a video on the Kalam? Nathan, I think you did a video on the Kalam, didn't you?
They did one of their 7-hour deep dives on it.
Oh, that was what that was. That's right.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of.
I mean, I know I came in late, Nathan, on that, and I know you guys are right, technically. Like, I'm coming in and talking to you about B-mode polarization, all that stuff, but I have a love-hate relationship as far as Craig's assertion goes with Kalam. So, ironically, Hugh Ross actually disagrees with Craig. I agree with Krauss, actually, in that debate with Craig, where I'm just like, Craig, or even with Sean Carroll, like, Craig, you're being a little bit, in other words, Craig is claiming omniscience in knowing what's happening.
It's almost as if he's misrepresenting the true state of affairs and what we do know in order to reach his conclusion.
Not really.
Almost.
You see, this is why I said bittersweet. So the reason why Krauss and Sean Carroll, if you really want to, bring it down to why they're frustrated with Craig, is because the so-called quantum gravity models that are still incomplete. In other words, we have a set standard model, the lambda CDA model, the Big Bang model, right? But everything breaks down at t equals 0. Therefore, Craig, we know there are models out there, in fact, hundreds and upon hundreds of models that's been proposed mathematically as well to try and sort that out. The problem is, and this is where Hugh Ross comes in, you need the size of Jupiter every second equivalent, the amount of energy expenditure to make a type of, like kind of like the Large Hadron Collider, right? And you need the size of, say, even the solar system itself in order to then figure out at that high energy level what's happening at t equals 0. So in other words, that in itself is physically impossible to do, but theoretically, obviously. So, Craig, at the end of the day, don't make assertions that the Bode-Wellington theory is, the Bode-Guth-Wellington is like smoking gun and so on, when really. So, for example, what's his name? Leonard Susskind. He spoke about an agent before that's causing the dynamics to take place before even time is a property. Like, don't just make that into a fact, like an objective fact. That's just a hypothesis. So you have Christian physicists like Hugh Ross saying, Craig, don't do that. So they're agreeing with Krauss and Sean Carroll. But what I find interesting is that's why I brought up the B-mode stuff. Because if B-mode is indeed the case, so B-mode is just gravity waves, to keep it simple, from t equals 0, you can then implicitly go back to suggest that, yes, the universe does start kind of like Krauss's from nothing. And then during his lecture, the Nobel Prize lecture, the 2013 Universe from Nothing conference they had, all the physicists that are friends with Krauss are just like, well, how do you have dynamics before time? And Krauss is like, I don't know. But that's what the data says, if B-mode is true. And sure enough, the Bicep 3 team is working on that, because they had to go back to the drawing board because they saw dust signatures that they thought they found it, which was a big thing, right? But then they had to go back and say, maybe not. There could be some interference patterns, so we need to do another test. So that's what they're doing right now. But if B-mode's true, Hugh Ross will make another blog post saying, voila, that agrees with the biblical ex nihilo model. So they're using B-mode but again, not explicitly, but implicitly, and also looking at black holes, especially with respect to quantum gravity models, to not 100% know what's going on, but close. In other words, we can get as close as we possibly can by inference and by an implicit means, even if you don't have the direct means to do it through, like a large hadron collider sort of thing. So that's what I wanted to say to you and James, by the way. But I
feel like everyone's already zoned out from your ASMR voice, Rob.
Okay.
It makes it very hard for you to make long, lengthy arguments when you have such
All right.
soothing tone.
Well, we seriously need a competition about who has got the best ASMR voice at this point.
You guys all have good voices, I have to say. It's got a little crew of good voices here.
Not to brag or anything, but to put credit onto my name, I've actually been in at least voicing a couple of bridged episodes for stuff. So
You sound like the Inner World guy.
In a world.
Yeah,
where
that
people
one.
Go to
Oh my
Zoom.
gosh, yes,
Oh my
you
God,
do.
you're the 777 film guy.
I am the guy where people are now in a StreamYard call. S.J. Thomason, Robert Rowe, Nathan.
From
Oh my
zero
gosh.
to radio voice. in
Wait a second. Are you the one? What's that guy's name? Oh shoot, David Smalley. Are you the one who made the thing for David Smalley's channel?
No, I had not. We've only debated at one point, but that's about it. But as far as radio voice goes, I did play Vince Fontaine from Greece in a play production of it. The voice would go like, "Spinning the stacks of wax here at the House of Wax, WAXX. Cruising time 55."
Oh my gosh, that's classic.
Thank you very much.
It might be between you and MPreziv about as far as which one has that more radio voice. Rob's got it. Yeah, you guys are all. I'd say you got some good voices.
The main benefit I have with the voices is every Friday night I do my Pathfinder sessions and helps out with coming up with NPC voices for some of the other nerds.
By the way, I'd link the video I recommend for you, Nathan, in your own viewing. It's only I think 8 minutes long. So
You can tell from his face how much he wants to watch it.
it's got Lawrence Krauss in it. It's got Victor Singer in it. It's got Sean Carroll in it. In fact, Sean Carroll making a prediction saying if B mode is true, this is in 2008 with Hugh Ross Hugh Ross is next to him on the panel. So so Sean Carroll's like, we don't know. We don't know what to expect. Hugh Ross turns to him, makes a prediction within 5 years. If B mode is true, it's just it goes along the biblical creation model, which is the ex nihilo Big Bang type thinking.
I mean, Rob, I'm not.
And sure enough, 5 years after, sorry.
I'm not a physicist, right? If I went off and did a PhD in physics, maybe I'd have some kind of relevant opinions about all this.
I've designed the video. No. I've designed the video to have a very simple one-line sentence.
Good. That's what I need too.
Everything is there for the layman to go, wow, and especially how when Lawrence Krauss.
You can't do that with these complex issues. You can't
I've nailed it down to just this is it. So what Krauss says in his book, ironically, is what Hugh Ross says in his works as well. And Krauss, at the end of the video, goes out of his way to say, I don't care if this is the case. In other words, I don't care. So the so-called entity, because that's how the panelists concluded it. Krauss, he's saying there's an entity before the universe. And Krauss's words were, I don't care. And there you go. It's bias at the end of the day, in my opinion.
Should we listen to it?
If you want to play it, definitely.
You say it's only 8 minutes?
It's only 8 minutes. Go for it.
Very doable. Yeah. Okay, let me get the link here. All right, hold on. I'm getting it. Okay. Hold on.
So this is what I want Craig to argue is what I'm saying. This is how, because Craig doesn't make this type of argument. He just says it, and I feel your pain is what I'm saying.
I've got an ad, so let me just mute this for a second. So you guys can keep talking. I've got the screen shared, but I'm going to let this ad run through fast. So.
There you go. You can skip.
Okay.
There you go.
Wait, hold on. Okay.
So read. Okay, SJ. Every time a screen comes up like this, if maximize it. Yep. Just read it out for the audience and then play the clip.
Okay, so in 2008, Hugh Ross debated Victor Stenger. Near the end of their debate, Victor mentioned the problems cosmologists face with Planck time and creation ex nihilo. Okay, so here we go.
First of all, time is what you measure on a clock. And the earliest, the smallest measurable time is the Planck time, 10 to the minus 44 seconds. So all you can do is go back Planck time by Planck, step by step, in units of the Planck time, to the earliest possible moment, and that's the Planck time. It's not zero. And at the Planck time, there was no singularity. The singularity only occurs at time t equals 0, but you never reach t equals 0 because the whole assumption is that time is a continuous variable. That's built into general relativity. It's built into classical physics. But time is in fact discrete. It's discrete in units of the Planck time. We just don't notice that because Planck time is so small by our everyday standards. And theories that assume that time is continuous often run into quantum electrodynamics was a good example of this, where they assumed time was a continuous variable and ran into these infinities that they had to go into a lot of trouble to get rid of, and they wouldn't have been there if they had accepted the fact that time was discrete.
Oh, wait. Soon afterwards, Sean Carroll joined the panel and voiced similar concerns that Victor read. Is that Victor Stenger, that guy was talking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the question is there were a couple questions in there. Is it possible that the multiverse has something to do with the singularity that is predicted by classical general relativity? And is there any possible evidence for or against from, for example, observations of the cosmic background radiation? So the honest answer to the first one is we don't know, of course. We need a quantum theory of gravity to describe what happens in the early universe, and we don't have one yet. It is very possible that a quantum theory of gravity, either string theory or something else, will help us understand how a universe like ours could have arisen either out of nothing or out of a pre-existing universe. So that's very possible, but right now we're in the we don't know stage.
So it says Hugh Ross jumped in and predicted that continual research can validate a significant understanding on gravity waves within 5 to 10 years, thereby defending bead mode polarization and further solidifying the cosmic singularity. Okay.
Thanks, Sean. Like, for example, there's hope that if we get better measurements of the cosmic background radiation, we'll not only be able to demonstrate that we live in an inflationary universe, but what kind of inflationary universe. If we can detect gravity waves, that'll help us constrain our models a little more. And I think realistically, within 5 or 10 years, we could be there and be able to answer these questions more definitively than we can today, and actually put to the test some of these speculations that we've been hearing about.
The prediction Hugh Ross proposed came true about 6 years later. Here is Sean Carroll's response on March 20th, 2014, conceding that he needed to update his teaching material on inflationary cosmology.
Last week, and in all the weeks before last week, I would go around giving popular talks about cosmology, and I would brag about the fact that we have experimental data, empirical information about what the universe was doing 1 second after the Big Bang. In a 14 billion year old universe, that's very, very impressive. 1 second after the Big Bang. As of Monday, I need to update all of my slides. We now have empirical information, real data that tells us what the universe was doing 1 trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang.
I'll just mute this for a second. So if you guys want to make a comment while this commercial runs.
Well, now it gets interesting because Krauss is going to get right into it now. Because now that I've laid that out, now it's Krauss saying what he says.
Okay, good. So it says on October 1st of 2013, Gustavus Adolphus College held a conference on origins. Lawrence Krauss spoke on the reality of nothing. He writes a book, A Universe from Nothing.
Yeah.
Now, the amazing thing is that we have learned, one of the great developments of 20th century physics, is that nothing is not so simple. When you put together the laws of quantum mechanics and relativity, then empty space becomes a dynamical thing, much more dynamical. When you put together quantum mechanics and special relativity, it turns out that the empty space is really a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles that are popping in and out of existence in a time scale so short you can't see them.
Hugh Ross was asked a question based on Krauss's lecture. Here was his response.
Isn't it true that the casual agent that created space and time could simply be something else we haven't discovered yet? That is a simple chemical or quantum reaction that caused space and time, not a god.
Well, that's actually addressed by none other than Lawrence Krauss in his book, A Universe from Nothing, because he speculates that maybe some kind of quantum event brings the universe into existence.
Yes.
And I'll give you a short answer, but I got a 16-page review of his book on our website.
Great.
At reasons.org. Here's a short answer. Yes, you can get virtual particles popping into existence of the quantum space-time foam of the universe, but they have to go back to the quantum space-time foam before the human observer can detect it. We call them virtual particles. And what Lawrence Krauss is saying, well, if we can do that with a virtual particle, why not the whole universe? But the greater the mass you try to bring into existence from the quantum space-time foam, the faster it must return. And the return time for something as big as the observable universe is 10 to the minus 120 seconds. And no matter how we interpret the days of creation, we all agree the universe is older than 10 to the minus 120 seconds.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Returning to Krauss's lecture in 2013, what he doesn't realize is that Hugh Ross's assessment is true, and in hindsight of Genesis 1:1, Krauss actually affirms it, not using Genesis.
And so this may be true, but if this is true, when a universe pops into existence, the laws of physics pop into existence along with it. And so you got no space, no time, no particles, no radiation, no laws. To me, that's a pretty good approximation of nothing.
After Krauss's lecture, a panel of cosmologists saw theological implications and asked specific questions in regards to the physics of his work, hinting at God as a pre-existent entity.
My question points much simpler. How do you have dynamics without time?
That's a wonderful question. I wish I had the answer. But the point is that when people talk about, in fact, one of the arguments, look, I've just come from Australia where I was having this debate with a Christian apologist, and the argument given of cause and effect, that there had to be some purpose because there has to be, the cause, and there has to be universal, the first mover, all the rest of the stuff. The point is, you're absolutely right. If time comes into existence at the same time as space, then the question of what happened before is not a good question.
It's not a scientific question.
It's not a scientific question. But I'm not sure it's not a scientific question. It's not a question we can answer yet because we don't have an understanding of that theory and how time can exist. I don't think you will agree with me that there's a vast difference between things we don't understand and things that are not understandable.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it's absolutely true that I can't, as a physicist now, adequately discuss what I mean by universes without time. But that doesn't mean that someday one of the young people sitting here won't.
No, but I'm just saying that's an obvious hole in the argument.
There's a what? That's a what?
That is, to me, the most obvious hole in the argument. I don't know how to talk about dynamics without time.
Well, you can imagine. You can. You can imagine. Well, you can imagine a super a super space, and I wasn't going to say superstring argument where you have a Hamiltonian and things look like they're static, but locally they're dynamics when you take part of the system. You know how to do all that.
Yeah, but then you have a pre-existing space in which there are laws of physics.
Not space.
And you have
you don't our
yeah,
space.
but you have a pre-existing entity of some
I don't care if there's a pre-existing entity. Our universe did not exist. It came into existence.
You got him.
See? That's it.
The rest of your life is up to you, and it can.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's it. I don't care if there's a pre-existing entity. That's what the implications lead to. Because when he speaks about, he tries to do a gotcha, like if you go into Hamiltonian maths to try and the whole super space thing. But the guy next to him, I forget his name, but he's also a guy I listen to. He does a lot of courses for the great like lectures for the great courses. He's just like, yeah, but all the models, and this is what Jeff Zwering says, this is what Hugh Ross says, Leonard Susskind says at Stanford. You have this causal agent. Again, they're not saying God. They're not, let's just remove God or remove mind. Something is there to then push this thing called the universe into being. Because don't forget, Krauss's work is literally saying time and space are one of the same. They're sort of like intermixed together. So that's why they're just like, look, it's a obvious hole in the argument. But at the same time, we can't neglect your work because it's legit. Hence the whole B mode thing that they're talking about earlier in 2008. Yeah.
I have a big problem today with science using 3D modeling as outcomes of things because, I mean, I'm an artist. I study 3D, creation of worlds. When you create a biodome or if you're going to create a video game and you create a world and you put nothing in it, nothing's going to happen. So something needs to start something. You need to initiate gravity, wind, the lighting, all of that needs to come into some kind of existence, and so there's a creator. So that's, what they're trying to say is there needs to be a space first to create.
But when you're coding a game, right, there is something there because there's the game that you've coded. It's not the same situation at all.
Well, I mean, yeah, when you first, when the programmers first start, there's nothing, and they're dealing with an XYZ negative space, and then they're placing those things in that negative space for us to interact in. But there's that space.
But what I'm saying is that that's the wrong analogy. Like the correct analogy, like it's not even like that relevant, but the correct analogy would be before you even sit down and conceptualize this game, when there's absolutely nothing, and that's the correct analogy. Like there's nothing to be created because that. And this is our theory of the universe at that point, right? There was absolutely nothing, not even like a blank space.
I just had to put that little code.
Yeah, I don't think you're even. Are you even aware of like the distinction? So, like Craig's argument relies on the A theory of time. Are you aware of that? So none of these cosmological models are.
And
even
that's why
available
I
to
disagree
him
with them on that as
because-
well. Obviously, it's a B theorist. Yeah.
Well, I'm
yeah.
not. This isn't against you, Rob, but this is it. Like, if people are going to be Christians and then say that they can rationally prove it for this and that reason, then like you shouldn't just believe in ideas because.
I
they're on
hope
the
you're
same
seeing
team.
that.
Like,
I hope you're seeing.
If you're gonna like look at these ideas.
Well, that's the whole thing. I don't think we can prove God. Proving God's kind of going outside of what His whole will is. Giving us a choice to believe in Him would kind of contradict that whole choice. Him coming down and putting his arm around you, saying, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" Kind of smacks in the face of it.
So how is it that Calvinists come to completely different conclusions?
Here we go, RC. Go for it.
I have no idea.
Oh, that's a good
But
one.
that's what
Yeah,
I'm
we've
saying.
got RC
Think
here.
about it.
So, like, regarding what? Because, like, are you talking about, like, in terms of proving or something else regarding to the different conclusions?
No, he said you can't prove God because then you wouldn't be able to make a choice.
And then
but the
faith
vast
goes out the
majority
window.
of Calvinists
I mean, faith. You're supposed to have faith. So what?
Right, but faith doesn't necessarily mean that you're, blind, going by blind faith, but that there is an evidence in the faith that you do have. And faith doesn't necessarily mean that there's like little evidence. I mean, and again, this isn't just necessarily a Calvinist thing. Like, I know a friend of mine that Rob should be familiar with. He's certainly not a Calvinist by any means, but definitely believes in the idea of proving the existence of God, and that we need to do so in the argumentation. The only thing is that we just have different methods of approach in how we handle it. So, like, my whole thing, of course, has lately just been focusing on the indirect proof for the existence of the Christian God. And as a result, that's where reading Van Til along with John Frame has been influential in trying to understand and get across that particular approach. It doesn't mean that we have an idea where if we're given proof, we're somehow removing choice or removing faith from the equation.
Well, right. I mean, but in our time today, you got to remember there was the Old and New Testament. God interacted with creation a couple times. He's not doing that anymore because of the new
I would
covenant.
disagree. I disagree with that. I mean, I believe you still see the interaction. Hence that's why we have the biblical God being true, because of it being a truly personal God compared to some of the others.
Well, I'm saying interactions, meaning like the next interaction was going to be the judgment, and then that's it.
You mean where you can visually see him?
God gave us the So God gave us the flood and the rainbow to say, I'm not going to flood the earth anymore, and the next judgment would be fire, which would be the Revelations, the end.
Right.
So
Right,
there's
but-
not going to be those. I mean, God probably does, what His will is when people pray and all that, but like He's not going to come down here and tinker with existence because He doesn't need to.
Well, I believe he
He's
technically
already
does that
told
by
us.
working with the natural laws and everything that occurs. So basically everything that happens from the light that shines upon us, from the rain that is then poured upon us, every single aspect is the work of God and the triune nature.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, like,
Yeah, but I think maybe you both missed my sort of meta point on that, which was more to do with, why is it that two Christians who both have revealed truth in this way will come to completely different conclusions about the ultimate nature?
No. That's ironically what Christianity, or even the Bible says, to renew your minds, because at the end of the day, we're fallible. We're making models. Scientific method is based on that ironic Christian theology.
I mean, I love science, and a lot of these.
Well, yeah, but it's not that. I'm not saying the Bible doesn't account for that. I'm saying, how on earth can we tell the difference if we've got two Christians that disagree on this point with all the same evidence?
I'm not a Calvinist, but there are tenets of Calvinism that. So, in other words, there are people who hold to views because they're sort of married to it. There could be subjective reasons. That's why I don't like labels. I don't like marrying to views, because I'm been trained to not do that. So if I was to, in other words, I'll say, if like RC knows this, I'm a Calvinist, Arminian, Molinist. Notice
you'd have to make up your
there's
own.
truth in all of it, right? But there are people who sort of like, they die on
They grab one and hold on to it for dear life, which is kind of ridiculous in my,
Don't then equate that, I guess you could say, supposed confusion, and blame God for that, or that God can't control.
It's like a Christian confirmation bias. It's what the Bible tells you not to do as well. It's like, go after what your ears want to hear. It's called not to do.
So I'm trying not to say it in a negative, judgmental way to RC or anyone, but that's like RC knows I'm very blunt with that.
Well, wait.
I mean, I don't like adhering to denominations neither. Go ahead. Sorry, buddy. Go ahead.
It's just that it seems like that. What if you're a Calvinist is part of the description of your theology, and he's a Calvinist? Why would it be treading on his toes?
I'll just give you, for the sake of time, because SJ needs to go. For the sake of time, for example, in Tulip, right? So the L limited atonement. This is my cheeky nuance of L. So in the very rigid Calvinist system, there's the whole notion of election and unconditional election and all that stuff. That then leads to if a very select elect are chosen, then hence it's limited atonement. I also believe in limited atonement, but RC knows I believe in unlimited atonement, right?
Yeah.
But so what do I mean, Rob? Limited atonement? Because it's unlimited atonement to a limited amount of humans. There's never been an unlimited amount of humans. It's a limited human race that God affects all, theoretically infinite, but there's only been 110 billion people that's ever lived. So that's what I'm getting at with the nuance. So RC is prone to, and I'm fine with him staying in his position. It is a rational position in its own right, but only within. And I'm saying this again. This is not to. He's a good friend, so he knows what I mean by this. But it's a rational position only in that Reformation European sort of thought process in Calvin's institutes. he wasn't aware of the thought processes going back to, say, the Second Temple ideas of election and predestination. I'm more interested in that. That's why I'm very nuanced in all this.
Yeah, there are. I want to say, I just want to point out, because I've been listening a lot to Alicia Childers lately, and I've been listening to Remnant Radio a lot. I haven't been posting it on Twitter as much because I'm trying to get myself off Twitter more. But she talks a lot about progressive Christianity and how they actually deny the resurrection in a lot of cases once you become this progressive Christian, and in certain versions of it. And I think that that's really dangerous, and I think that that's something that's kind of infiltrating our society right now. So there are people calling themselves Christians, but they don't agree with what most Orthodox Christians would say are the core doctrines.
And that's what, so RC and I would wholeheartedly go, if we stripped away all these other thought processes and these hypotheticals, like I think he'll agree with me on this. Calvinism as a model is a model at the end of the day. But what him and I will say is grounded from a Christian context are things like the Nicene Creed and so on, because that those tenets of faith is what is core that defines, biblical Christianity and stuff like that. So
I agree. And even Catholics, Catholics, obviously, they created the Nicene Creed. So
yeah.
It's something I had to memorize when I was a little kid growing up.
Yeah.
So listen, I have to get going, but I wanted to see if everyone could maybe go around and just let us know. I got a few more minutes. Let us know what you're working on now, or what we can look forward to. If I don't have a link to your channel in my thing, I want to put one in there, so I'll be sure that people can get in touch with you guys. Maybe we'll start with Mr. Parker. We'll start with the order where you came in here.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, and I do have some videos on my YouTube channel. My Twitter is @the_Mr. Parker, and my YouTube channel is just the name you see on the screen. And I recently did a video about corporations and the ethics of it, and I mostly talk about politics and sometimes religion on my channel.
Excellent. I don't know if can you tweet out a link to your channel for me to see, or put it in?
Yeah.
So I can get that, because I remember you've been on my channel before, but I couldn't find your channel.
Yeah, I'll see if this works. This link works.
Excellent. Who came in next? I think it was Nathan was next.
Yeah, I've got a channel called Digital Gnosis, and I just have general discussions on there, similar to this.
Thank you. Who came in? I think Rob, you came next.
Very, very close to finishing the Resurrection episode for Bedrock, and that's going to be a good one because there's a lot in there that made me more refined, kind of like also taking me back a couple of years ago, and I hope it's a blessing. I hope it's a critical. So from a critical mindset, I hope those folk can appreciate for what it is, and for the Christian, obviously, I hope it's a blessing. So, yeah.
Great. And then RC?
Yeah, I mean, not much has gone on with the channel at this point. The only thing that really has got coming up is the January quarterly for the Defender Times. Will be last issue was on Islam, and now we're working on a polytheism issue. The only problem is that it's going to be a little bit smaller than the others because we haven't had as much contributions. The only article we mostly have that's really of a good significance at the moment is Timothy McCobb's essay on refuting polytheism from Philosophy and Logic on his case. So we'll have that ready sometime within the starting days of January. So have something to look forward to for 2021 besides this terrible year overall.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and I know you go out there and you battle Muslims, and I don't have the knowledge of their scriptures at all to be able to do that at all.
Hey, put me on here one day. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, I'll have to get you in a debate with one on my channel.
Also, you should check out my interview with Anam.
I believe I have. I think I was actually there for part of it.
Oh, okay. Now he's doing really well, man. It's really cool to see. He's such an honest guy. He's really cool. Yeah.
Very cool. M?
Yeah. I don't really have much on my YouTube channel. It's just old content, but I'll have to check all you guys out. You guys are pretty new to me, except for USJ. I've seen some of your stuff with G-Man, and I mean, I've been watching these guys on YouTube for years. It feels like almost decades now. So, I mean, hopefully I can get some content out soon. I got to start a new channel that's not just, old stuff. So I'll check all you guys' stuff out.
Good. I'm glad that my G-Man videos got your attention. That's awesome. Hey, and V.
I don't have a YouTube channel or anything. I am on Twitter sometimes, and I have a website that I hope to put things on, but I don't really do any apologetics or anything like that, so maybe not that interesting.
All I do is bitch at Nathan.
Bitch at Nathan. Good. Someone has to, right? No, just kidding.
He deserves it.
Well, I'm going to try to run these more often. I'm officially pretty much almost on sabbatical. And so I'm going to have the whole next semester to open up. So I'm probably going to try to do these every Wednesday. Wednesday seems like a pretty good day right around this time, or maybe a little later in the afternoon sometimes. But so if you guys ever want to come back, feel free to come back. I've really enjoyed having all of you here. This has been a very fruitful conversation. I think we undid all the damage that Pine Creek has done. Just kidding. Just wanted to say that. So thank you so much,
we won
everybody.
the day because he left the stream, right? So
yeah, he abandoned. He jumped ship.
Come on, Pine Creek, you can try harder.
So, all right, thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast.
Thanks, SJ.